What's up, everybody? This is Carrick with ACG, and I'm here with Johnny from Johnny Plays League of Legends, actually, is what it should be called.
Johnny
now,
with
right?
with ACG.
Johnny
Can
with
I get
ACG.
a little badge? Like a little...
Yeah, we can get you a badge. We should get you a badge now that I think about it. But we're going to be covering a bunch of stuff today. Unfortunately, we couldn't get Silver in. We're having some issues there with connections across the pond, as it were. But he will probably jump into chat. We'll have to see. I want to say thanks to everybody for showing up. And thanks to Johnny and Silver for always attempting to get in. We're also thinking about changing up some things when it comes to tech and maybe just how we do all this so that we can have a little bit more of a technical success rate, because our success rate, especially across the pond, doesn't seem to be the best. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to change some tech that we use or something. Currently, we're using Zoom. Yeah, it is a little bit spotty. It was spotty with the connection. It was spotty with everything. But speaking of spotty, reporting, games, discussion has been particularly spotty when it comes to video games this week. This week has been quite the odd time, like just almost an uncomfortable time when I see people talking about games this week. I don't know. It's been weird, and we're going to discuss a bunch of that. We're going to discuss NDAs, blacklisting, because that's popped up. We're going to discuss Veilguard, its reviews, our impressions, if we played a little bit of it. We're going to be talking about Blops 6, Monster Hunter Wilds, and about 15 other things, including, the Alan Wake DLC.
Yeah.
The Alan Wake DLC will probably also lead us into a conversation about expansions and DLC.
Alan Wake itself. Oh, I thought you were going to talk about the fact that they haven't yet made up their money back, or barely. For Alan Wake.
No, I wanted to talk a little bit about how DLC versus expansions, and something that popped up here recently, which was a discussion from one of Skyrim's developers who was talking about why we don't see expansions anymore, and except for very few games. And I thought that that'd be a cool discussion. We've talked about it before. Once again, always, I feel like we get done discussing something in the podcast, and then boom, I log in and there's some news website covering it. I'm like, what the hell, man? That's so weird. I don't understand. They're listening to us, man. That's how they're getting all their news. That's how they're getting all their news.
Dude, I swear, like, sometimes we discuss stuff in our voice chat in your Discord, and I'll get like a video the next day in my YouTube feed, like on my homepage.
I won't say.
I don't want to go tinfoil, but
I won't say all of it's on purpose. You can definitely tell that there are some things that I'm like talking to you guys that's like behind the scenes baseball, where I'm expecting it to go out the next day. But there's a couple times where we have been talking about some pretty crazy stuff, and then the very next day, and that's why I'll DM everybody and be like, dude, this is weird, man, because it's so eclectic. It's such an odd thing we might discuss, and then it becomes a big deal the very next day, and it's like, usually I'm just under the assumption we've all been talking about something, and the reason why we are is because it's boiling up, and somebody's going to make a video.
It's all in there.
Yeah, there's definitely been ones there that were on purpose, but it's been an odd one. What have you been playing this week? Like overall, what's the stuff you've been jumping into?
I've actually played a bunch of different stuff, because there was Call of Duty early in the week. I played some of the campaign there. I played the Alan Wake DLC, almost all of it. And then today I've jumped into Dragon Age.
So of all those games, which one has stuck with you the most?
Well, I don't think it's a fair comparison, because Dragon Age I've only had today. I put in 4 hours and I've been liking it a ton. So I think that's kind of the biggest enjoyment of the week.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also very early. That's one thing. When I give my opinion, I want people to understand. Right. I'm like 4 hours in, so that's not a good representation of a game like this, right? I'm kind of getting and for now I'm loving it. We'll talk about it, but yeah, there's something to be aware of when people talk about the game. Yeah,
I mean, any of these is like that, where you just jump in and you start talking about it, and people are like, "Oh, so this is your final opinion?" So no, dude, I gotta actually play it for a while.
Like, the previews were very positive, and then some people, their opinion changed a lot in the final review.
Yeah, it's been an odd situation, but not one that is unheard of, and certainly one that we're starting to see more of. I've talked to you about it many times, where, like, I think the previews are set up in a way where, at least if not positivity, but possibly a more neutered approach to your preview is how people go into it. And we see it from everybody. There is really no one who doesn't do that, because even if you're like, well, this is a beta, so I'm going to ignore some of the tech issues, pops up. And it's one of the reasons why it's very difficult for me to go to any of them, because usually I'm like, well, this isn't a beta thing, because I've tested games before. I'm like, that's not a beta thing. That's going to be in your game. So like, I want to talk about it. And they're like, well, we'd rather have you not. It's like, all right, well, then I'm not going to talk about the game at all. Like, at some point you have this weird issue. And so you get what I feel is a vacillation. You know, you get this like situation that's really dynamic, where the previews seem one way, and then you get the game and it's pretty cratered. And you're like, how did we get from there to here with all these supposedly honest people? And it's like, many are honest. It's because of the entire way the preview system works in gaming, and really in anything, I suppose, because I've seen and talked to people who've went and watched movies and then come back and been like, you know, had a completely different impression of when it finally released, because they were seeing it previs. You know, they were seeing like things with missing special effects, all that kind of stuff. And so it was this odd situation there. Decker Duke, what's up, everybody? Johnny is in here with me. Kig's in here. Anti-Sky's in here. Decker Duke, Warpig, Ben, William, Robert. Thank you, guys. If you get a chance, please spread the word that we're doing this. I absolutely appreciate it. Decker Duke says there's been some controversy with review keys not being available to reviewers who gave a mediocre preview. Yeah, I think now we can certainly look at that and say not a thing, especially because I did see some people who gave it mediocre previews and gave it mediocre reviews, and they got keys. I think some people just didn't get keys. And it's happened to me. I've done videos on it. We've talked about it endlessly. You know, we'll talk about it again when we jump back into Dragon Age. But first, I just want to say we've got a brand new little gamey game that we've got set up. It's called What Dat? And what it is I'm going to show you a bunch of screenshots, and you guys in 30 seconds need to guess what game it is. Johnny and I will sit here quietly. It's 30 seconds, just a little fun thing that I was informed by an admin that there were multiple different like podcasts that already do this. And I was like, you know what? That's an easy one. And because I play so many games, I probably got some ideas that might be fun. I have a feeling people will guess this because it's my first try, but here we go. So you're going to get about 30 seconds of screenshots, and you need to guess the name of the game. I just have a feeling after the very first screenshot, people are going to know because of some stuff, but I want to see what you guys think. Here we go. All right, there we go. I have a feeling it's going to be instant. Let's see. Let's jump in here. While you guys are trying to guess what game it is, I'm going to read this super chat. $10 super chat from Christopher Jetzer. I've been seeing a lot of the grifter type YouTube channels saying the mainstream media sites such as IGN are giving Dragon Age 9 and 10 because Ziff Davis owns most major publications. Thoughts? Well, I don't think that makes a ton of sense, because we also see many independent as well as smaller websites and bigger websites giving it higher scores. So I don't think that's as controlled as people assume. I think there's this idea that over the top, there's a push, and it may exist in some places subconsciously, but I don't quite think just because Ziff Davis owns them, there's any kind of situation there. No, especially because we had Ty Guy Travis on. He explained, you know, how reviews are done for him, at least. I know he's not full-time there. He's a, I guess, a freelancer, but he works for IGN, does a lot of stuff there, and I've never really felt that's ever popped up. So looking here at your guesses, Starfield, Star Wars Outlaws, Starfield. This is hard, Warpig says. This is hard. Tetris, Mario, Starfield, Diablo 2, Starfield, you're wrong on all these. Call of Duty, Star Trek, Manhunt, possibly Zork. Kel says, come on, Dave. Conan from the Apple II. No, I don't think so. Let's see. Damn, Call of Duty, Black Ops 2, no. Oh, Warpig was just surprised Call of Duty was on there. Anybody else get an idea? Do you have an idea, Johnny?
Yeah, you actually spoiled to me what it was
No, did
before.
I? How?
Yeah,
Don't say the name. How did I spoil
I
it to you?
no, you told me which game it was.
Oh,
You
did
gave
I?
me the yeah,
I'm
you gave me the
sorry, dude.
inside.
I
No,
wanted
it's
you to
all
be
good.
able to play. I wanted you to be able to play. Man, I feel so bad for that. Anyway, while we're doing this, if you guys get a chance, I would appreciate it big time if you guys spread the word of the podcast as we begin this, because we're going to do some behind the scenes discussion about games. I'm going to spoil it in about 5 minutes if you guys can't figure out what that game is. Moving on from there, I want to talk about Black Ops for a second. So we've been playing a massive ton of Black Ops, absolutely balls out with the guys, and it has been really incredibly
Balls out
enjoyable.
with the guys.
Balls
Yeah,
out
it's
with the guys.
great.
Balls out with the guys. Clip that. It has been highly enjoyable, Johnny. Like, there's not a lot of Call of Duties that I can say I stuck with very long, but I have had a great time just generally playing, and I think it's a good indicator. From what we see now, Microsoft has stated it's the largest. Microsoft and Activision have stated it's the largest ever release for a Call of Duty. I would say, just looking at numbers and people that I see talking about it, it definitely is that. Our LAN group is, 7,000 people, I think, in my other LAN group, and almost everybody's still playing it, whether it be campaign, zombies, or multiplayer.
Are you guys mostly doing zombies or also like multiplayer?
No, it's a good question, dude. So I don't know about you, but whenever a mode comes up, there needs to be a good number of levels for me to really engage with it. And zombie is notorious for not having a ton, and it's got 2. So what happens is you feel like you're fucking playing NASCAR, because at some point you're so accustomed to the level, you're just going in circles, and there's little Easter eggs and stuff you can do. But once that's done, I found myself pretty disappointed in zombies. The initial bump was nice, but then I noticed it gets really messy. It's fairly messy because there's so many enemies and you can get caught on them and stuck in place. And there's just some oddities there. But then you add in that it's only got 2 levels, one of them being what I consider to be fairly small for the insane, fast, chaotic gameplay where you can cover one side of the map all the way the other quite quickly just because of how it plays out. So most of ours has been campaign. People have been jumping into campaign, then jumping into multiplayer. And we've been doing all kinds of multiplayer. Gone online, played multiplayer. A bunch of us do a bunch of that. But then also set up private matches, cranked the bots to the hardest humanly possible. And I gotta say, for a game that I would say isn't normally known for having at least fun bots, or bots that mimic humans in small ways, at least this one's got some of that. They go prone, they do some jumps, drop shots. So it's actually been fun to invite everybody in and say, okay, it's going to be us 3 against an entire team of the hardest, and it's going to be 20 hit points. So your time to kill is like, ba-ba-ba. It's super fast, and it feels so good. But here's the great thing. Man, did I improve at multiplayer after I did that. And this is one of the things I've always told people is I wish more games had that level of test, that ability to see, because even just seeing a character halfway across the screen and not worrying about it being a human, and for a second being able to go, okay, that guy's fairly visible there. That means I'll be visible. A little bit more time to think, a little bit more time to put your plans together. Then you go into multiplayer and you're like, okay, here we go. And I can use some of that. And it's been really enjoyable, man. And it runs, at least for me, phenomenally. I've a couple crashes here and there, but man, it's
nice.
been it's been really enjoyable.
Bots are awesome in those games.
Oh yeah, especially just learning.
Yeah, learning. Like if you're not very good and you're just getting smoked in multiplayer, it's hard to have fun, isn't it? Because you're just, you're never doing well. I think it's fun when at least sometimes you're doing well. You're pumping off, you're having a good game, and bots really help to see what works, just get in there, practice a bunch of stuff.
And understand the way the map is set up and works without people doing their weird people thing. Just able to walk around. I mean, hell, you could do that with a pre-visualization of the map too, whichever. But I think that the more chances you give of somebody being able to look and go, okay, dude, I was doing stuff like testing out, how far did the bullets go through this particular material or this material? Oh, in this corner, it feels like the bullets go a little farther, and being able to pick up on that. And then having people come in, and it's been hilarious having people who are really good at Call of Duty come in, play a little bit, get smoked for a little bit, and then you can see them learning. And then they go back and they come back for multiplayer and they're like, dude, Okay, that worked. Like that was ridiculous. I think we don't realize a lot of times that it's not always about playing the person. Sometimes it is about playing and understanding a map or movement on a map, and adjusting it. So that's been just really awesome, man. Baseball gear came in. Jay's played a little bit. Void and I played a bunch of it 2 nights in a row. We've had a really good time just playing, jumping around, because he's not a big fan of going in and probably bouncing. I don't have too much of an issue bouncing off, skill-based matchmaking, going up and down. But there are times where, especially when a newcomer comes in, Void said something along the lines of, sometimes getting shot by the AI isn't as demeaning as being shot by a human when I'm in this chaotic fray. And so he's able to just enjoy himself and run off. So that game, everybody, was Atomic Heart, by the way, that we did the what's that kind of, little guess the game kind of thing. We'll be doing that occasionally.
A couple people got it right.
Did they? I missed it because I've been talking. So they got it.
Juwan and Kig in chat got it right.
Kig got it. Kid got it. And who did? Who else did? Juwan. Yeah, you did.
Juwan.
Ooh,
yeah,
look at
I'm
that. So you know what I need
sure
to do? Yeah, I need to like give them a special. I need to make a special like avatar for in here and give it to people who get that answer right. Right?
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, I'll do that. But thank you very much for people just playing that, hanging out, and enjoying the podcast. When it comes to Call of Duty,
you talked about the campaign though.
Mm-hmm.
So have you played the campaign already, or just
not beat it?
Watched some
not
people?
beat it, but played it.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You like it so far? The setup with the house and everything, the money.
Yeah, those are there. They're ads. I don't need that or dislike it, but they're there. They're fine. What I like is that it's a little longer, which means the way it's set up has a little bit more time to breathe than like being 3 hours or 3.5 hours. I mean, our podcasts are longer than Modern Warfare 3's like campaign or whatever that last game was.
Famously
was.
Yes.
Yeah. And so the ability for it to just breathe a little bit, I think that's awesome. I think that the way it plays, it's typical Call of Duty Michael Bay kind of thing, but with Black Ops like level of Black Ops has always been the Illuminati, paranoia version, where Call of Duty have still shown like the disease of like warfare and what it does to a commander's brain and their thoughts about what people are, if they care, that kind of thing. But with this one, it goes off the rails a bit, and I've liked that overall. I think it's great. Baseball Gear says the best thing for me is mission variety. Go ahead. You like the characters? Like, what about them?
Yeah, I like the characters. I thought the writing was pretty good for an action game, and their delivery is good. It's like solid. I was interested in like talking to the people, and when you come back to the house, it's kind of cool. I did enjoy the little break between missions and everything.
Sure,
worked pretty well for me.
Did you beat it?
I haven't beat it, no, but I've played like 4 or 5 hours in it.
Damn, 4 or 5. So see, that's what's crazy.
Quite a bit.
You haven't beat it, and you've got 4 or 5 hours into it, which is such a nice and it shouldn't be normal feeling on my part.
And I took my time with it too. Just kind of like talking to everybody and trying stuff out in missions, seeing like, oh, can I do this? Can I? And some missions are fairly gated where, you can only operate in a strict area, and others were a little bit more open, which I enjoyed.
Jawan, I think I'm probably pronounced Jamel. No, on this one said like Delta Gear versus GURPS. He's talking about D&D games, and he's actually correct. That is exactly that is the way the game plays out. Is Delta Green is the supernatural paranormal military unit RPG, and then GURPS has a ton of shit, but GURPS also has the very modern. Yeah, man. I know the house is there. It maybe you could say it's to slow you down, but actually, there's puzzles in there. There's stuff to do. I think that's cool. It's just a little bit more time spent in the world, which feels less pushy, I guess, would be the easiest way, at least so far for me. How far do you think you are?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty far into it. I think I'm close to wrapping it up.
So you think 5 hours will be your
I think like 6 hours. I'll wrap it up. Yeah,
it's not bad at all.
Which
SBZ, welcome. It's sorry.
It's a good length,
Yeah. Got a little girth, got a little length.
Yeah,
It's just
it's got the
it's a good, nice average. Is all we're saying, right?
yeah.
Feels good. Feels
Right.
good. SBZ, welcome to supporter Discord access. Thank you very much. Also appreciate everybody who does join up to become Discord heathens and jump in and talk about games in the Discord. We have some great discussions, and those discussions have been phenomenal in the last week, not the least of which for many reasons that involve all the shit that's happened with Dragon Age. So we're just going to cover some of that. So Dragon Age reviews came out. It's actually scored quite well compared to just sort of what I thought it, maybe not what I thought it would, but maybe what I was sort of wondering what the average would be. I think I thought it was more like a 75, or that's what it would hit. It's hit 85. I think Xbox is like at 89 or 90, a couple fewer reviews. So that's sort of how that goes. And then PC meta, I believe, is 85 plus. I could be wrong on that now because it continually changes. We saw these reviews. Then we saw some YouTuber reviews that gave it there were a couple that gave it really good reviews and a couple that gave it scathing reviews. And it's been interesting to see that dichotomy there. Dude, it's so funny because you can almost tell who watches and who travels in what packs. Because you have somebody say, man, I can't believe how poorly this reviewed. And you're like, what? What do you mean it reviewed poorly? And then you ask them how they got their data. And then somebody will say, man, this has no issues. And you'd be like, well, how did you get your data? And you see these two lines, of watchers and enjoyers of it. And it's one of those things where in our Discord, at least, and in the other LAN Discord that I'm in, I was quite surprised by how many people like it, because I thought when I was just sitting back waiting for responses, I was like, here we go. This is sort of going to be the litmus test on how these guys respond to things. The writing, separate for a second, but the gameplay, the actual gameplay.
Yeah.
I've been quite surprised because of a couple of our Discord guys are pretty gameplay centric and pretty difficult to please on the gameplay side, and aren't the kind that like a game. In fact, they're the kind of people that you sort of have to prove yourself. So they're not a person who plays 2 hours and says, this is great, and then 10 hours later comes back and says, this is not for me. So I was quite surprised on the mechanical side of how many people have enjoyed that. And then talking to a couple journalists and how much they've enjoyed the mechanical side. The mechanical side seems to be either average or good from when I'm talking to people about like what they like and seeing sort of what it is that they're enjoying and pulling from the title. Is that what you would say you've picked up on, or would you say you've got a different idea?
Yeah. From my experience, I'm really enjoying the combat. And I think even on the negative reviews that I've seen, people have been very positive on the gameplay itself. I think a lot of the negativity I've seen has mostly come from either fans of prior Dragon Age games that are maybe different, right? In tone and things you can say in dialogue and things like that. Or maybe like the presentation of how the characters are and look and things like that, which I get that. To me, none of those were issues. Right. So I'm just left with the good stuff in a way. So I'll come across as a shill because I've been enjoying it a lot.
Is that a shill now? Just liking something?
Yeah, I think if you're positive, you've bought into the EA.
I had ass kissing, booty kissing. I had a discussion on Twitter where I said, hey, we're going to talk about Dragon Age. And a really nice person on Twitter was like, okay, great, but please don't lap everyone into the issue with like being okay with, like inclusion or what have you, because some of us just don't like the writing. And I was like, well, no worries. You won't hear that from me because as somebody who jokes about some pretty, weird things in reviews, I certainly could never come across as being woke. But I was like, when I do talk about it, be prepared, because I don't give a fuck if you're mad about it. I don't care if you're comfortable with the discussion. If I like something, I like it. I'm not going to sit here and like make sure that you feel comfortable over the discussion. And it was awesome because he's like, that's exactly what I want. And I do feel that gamers are starting to come back to that a little bit. I think that there was a overreaction towards putting a bunch of shit in games. People reacted to that. And I've seen a lot of people who are a little bit more like, okay, we can separate this and that. Sorry about my dogs. They're super excited that we're getting food delivered to the house. And it's not me, but hey, guys, shut up. They won't listen. It reminds me of Ming when we all started. So it's been a pretty fascinating discussion. I might have to shut them up because he may not stop. Nope, he's there. Hey, hang on one second. I'm going to mute myself while I scream at him.
Yeah.
That'll come across on the podcast version though, because I only mute the OBS.
Oh, nice.
So
yeah.
So what do I think of it so far? Well, I'll say this. Combat-wise, same thing. I will say what I've noticed of the writing is really bad. And I don't mean bad like, I don't even mean the subject. I mean, the subject matter is definitely, it's going to end up swaying people one way or the other. But the writing itself is really, it's really on point, to the point to where it doesn't feel as much of a fantasy as it does somebody giving you the cliff notes of the RPG you're going to play next week. So it doesn't feel like you're playing an RPG sometimes. It feels like you're being told about the world next week you're going to join. And I can only say that, and a lot of, D&D fans may understand exactly where I'm coming from. A lot of actual fans may have no clue. But it does come across to me as something where the writing is definitely not at the level that I like a lot of RPGs so far. And then
like immersion. And like you're a part of.
Yeah, and just sort of the eclectic bits that maybe we experience in other RPGs. But again, I'm not super far in. I'm barely, I'm like not very far in. I have watched a little bit, but I'm not worried about spoilers. Honestly, I just haven't had the time. I legit pretty much forgot it was coming out. And that's not a sign of the game not interesting me or whatever. It was just a lot of games and a lot of things going on, So
yeah. What class did you play so far? Did you try different ones or?
I did. I haven't really found one. I'll probably do Mage, just because that's the gameplay I saw that looked so interesting in all the previews. So I'll probably just stick with that. What about you?
Yeah, I thought they all looked good. I'm trying Rogue.
Okay.
I like the, mobility and everything. So far, I think it feels really good to play. The fluidity of everything, how you can animation cancel with your dodges and you feel super agile like your dodging looks good. I mean, I know I talk about this a lot, but the game has a good dodge, which is not something I take for granted because like in many other games, I tell you, oh, terrible dodge. You're doing it all the time. So it matters a lot that, it feels good, it looks good, it's effective.
Yeah.
And overall, like the attacks feel good to do. I like that Mass Effect wheel thing with the companions.
Sure.
Where you don't have to micromanage them. They're doing their own thing. And they're essentially another cooldown, right? In your bar. You can call them in. I like the way it works. It's simple, but it's also has some depth because you can level them up and choose which direction to take them and what to do there. And overall, I like the characters themselves. They're likable is what I would say. Like the dwarf lady, I think she's wholesome and I want to protect her. The Neve, the wizard lady, the mage lady early on, she's a bit sassy, but also charismatic and stuff like that. So far I like the characters. The gang is cool. The character creator is awesome. By the way, I played around quite a bit with that.
Yeah, it's a good character creator overall. Yeah, there's some things missing, but.
Yeah, but it's not often that I can create something that looks really good. And when it shows up in a cutscene, I'm like, yeah, that works.
BioWare fixed their hair.
Dude, the hair looks great. Yeah, great hair.
If there's you know what? Instead of looking like Shepard stole a baby, cut off its hair and glued it to his fucking chin, like in the Mass Effect games, that shit was just crazy looking. They've definitely improved that. So far I would say you and I are somewhat opposite on the characters, but that's not to be too surprising, I think, because overall I haven't been a fan of BioWare's characters for a long time. Their side characters, their companions. I liked a couple in Mass Effect 1.
Predictable, you would say, or what?
Yeah, they're too predictable, and their writing almost always the writing that BioWare puts into their games and the choice that they want. Whenever you pretend there's ultimate choice in a game that has a fairly limited number of endings, the result usually is that if you played enough games, you start realizing how many things don't matter, or how many. And in this game in particular, it feels like they decided to not even try that, and instead just give you a couple options. And instead of making it feel like there were a bunch and then being unhappy at the ending, they're like, well, there's not as many, and therefore we hope you won't be as unhappy in the ending. So it's a different way of writing games. I just really have never felt that they have the most nuanced characters overall. It's just one of those things. And in this game so far, I think the nuanced character is going to be, what's his name? The bad guy. Like that. That's
Solus.
Yeah. I mean, and that I'm actually okay with that. Like that. I'm okay with their idea of it. I got to see how it comes out when I play it overall. But I will say that combat has been somewhat enjoyable. I saw people comparing this to like other games that I consider to be terrible. And again, probably because I just don't care whatsoever about a lot of this, that I'm maybe sort of disjointed when it comes to this kind of stuff. But I would say I saw people saying it was, it was terrible. It was worse than Outriders. It was worse than Gotham Knights. It was worse than Anthem, all these. And I'm sitting there going, okay, listen, I played a lot of games, a lot. And if we're saying a game that had like 3 seconds of combat and then you couldn't even like run around in a town, if we're saying this is worse, I really need to identify where this suddenly becomes worse. It could certainly be worse in the storytelling, but I think the combat already is enjoyable enough to probably pull me through. We'll just have to see. We'll have to see. The big problem for me is just, dude, there's a lot of games. So the moment I start playing this, I already have 2 other games that are ready for review. So I'm trying to figure out how to, because people have been asking me, are you going to do a review? And I'm like, I would love to, but I do have to pay the bills. And that does bring us to the other thing: blacklisting, NDAs, embargo, review code. So let's just get this out of the way. First, review code. I did not get one. Was I refused one? No. Was I ghosted, I guess? Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they responded and then just sort of disappeared. Did I do much about it? No. I contacted somebody to sort of be my agent. I was like, could you help me out with this? And then promptly forgot it was coming out. That's just the way it was because of how busy it was. So that's sort of on me. So that definitely, that part of the discussion did happen. I did get some of the, what I call them, like placating emails that are like, oh, we're working on it.
We're on it. Yeah.
But what's interesting to me, maybe this is new for others, this has been so tried and true for my channel for the last 5 years that it absolutely doesn't surprise me. That kind of stuff happens to me once a month, where there's certain companies in particular that I see their email back and I'm like, not getting a code. This one truly did feel like I was getting one, and sort of just stepped away, then got something, was like, maybe I'm not, contacted somebody, and then stepped away from it. But yeah, so that part did happen, but I don't in any way, shape, or form think like it was a blacklisting for me. For me, it's a pattern that's always popped up with EA. I've been pretty hard on some EA games too, so maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe they just don't like that I cuss, because I do really cuss a lot in the views. I don't know, but it does suck. I would have loved to have reviewed this game. I would have loved to have reviewed it, because I don't know what my thought process would have been, because I don't talk to anybody else. So like the idea of what other people thought it was, I wish I could have been there day one to be like, here's me and here's my foot in the sand. And then here's everybody else in their foot in the sand. Next up, we got the stories about the leaks. So there were leaks. Mr. Matty Plays responded to it. That basically, I guess it was his character creator was in some of the leaks with some of the stuff that supposedly he said. That was in there in the leaks. Those leaks got out, but they were from a Twitter account that I can tell you, somebody who's worked with Matty for like 8 years or something like that. Definitely never, ever in a million years would I have thought that the racist things that Twitter was saying was him. Like, that made no sense at all. But there was some game information in there. I just don't know. He stated that it was somebody, but didn't say who it was. So there were some people, who were trying to figure out like why that wasn't said. I can't speak to any of that. I can just simply say that Twitter account and what was said, never in a million years would that, like, is my brain saying that those racist things or those things were from him. those things. Whether it be story information, that's something different. But those things, nah, sorry. That's not, I can firmly say that never, ever had a hint of that. That being said, the leak did come out. He stated it was his, and that somehow that data went out. I don't have any privy information about that, so I can't speak to it. I can say that it has already adjusted the way some companies are working. The reason why I know that is because the day after, I got an addendum to a review that stated very clearly, oh, and by the way, if you have an editor or a friend who you want to show this to, they need to be on this NDA, and please give us our name and contact, which I've sent you before when you're doing them. And as of today, 4 previews I'm doing, all 4 have either had that new or got an addendum or it's in there. So it's like,
reacted pretty quick to.
Yeah, they reacted pretty quick.
But I did want to ask you your take about the, Fextra Life came out with a really strong stance. They did a whole video talking about how the fact that they weren't given a code is indicative of EA only giving codes to people who are likely to be positive. And they were saying because they never give above 9 and other people do give 10s and stuff, they were saying they were prioritizing folks who do give out higher marks overall. What do you make of that? Do you think there's enough evidence to say definitely they're sort of cherry picking who they give it to? Is it kind of, is there an intention there?
Yes, but it's the intention that if anybody in the industry pretends that they don't know how it works, they're lying to you. They're lying because they will state it behind the scenes. That is normal. Let me give you an example. If I am out there to sell my product and I know that there are a certain number of people who want to review my product, who would I send it to? Or who would I at least put priority on? It would be the people that I have either an arrangement with when it comes to trust, NDAs, all that kind of stuff. The people that they understand where we're coming from. I'm talking more along the lines of if it was me versus them. But if it was me, I'm trying to think of something I would release. Let's say it's a game or something. If I made a game. There were definitely. Now, would I also release to some people that maybe hadn't given me the greatest because I would hope that they would give a good review? Yes, I would. And when it comes to publishers, their job as a publisher and the developer's job, by the way, we can all pretend that just because a title is in front of a name, you're magically a good guy or you're magically a bad guy. That shit doesn't fucking exist. That's completely outside any kind of reality. If anybody tries to tell you that, they're lying. And if you try to use it as a defense in a discussion, you're lying to yourself because you're losing the nuance that exists in all this. Absolutely, they will do that. But what I have noticed, for the most part, is most companies will also give them to select others. That includes myself. Now, the big problem with this one, I can't speak to you on it, Johnny, because I got no code. But what I did get was a code on Black Myth. And I can't speak about the NDA, but I can say this. None of the stuff that was leaked about that NDA was on mine. It was, you can't say anything until this date. Boom. That was it. So I got that one. So does that mean they thought I would love it? I don't know. What I was told was that somebody on my behalf said, Carrick's going to be fair on it regardless of where it's from. Maybe because they watch the podcast and they know I have a multi-ethnic family. I have no clue why that was done. But yeah, it was done. So that kind of stuff is real, man. It's absolutely real. But it's also real that EA's given me codes after I've smashed a game. Activision. Microsoft gives you codes no matter what if you smash a game. The only thing Microsoft, from what I've been able to really glean, is that truthfulness is a big deal. If you get caught with some hyperbole that shows some facts that aren't checked, maybe you're going to have an issue. Sony's the same way. I've hammered on Sony games. Days Gone, never touch. Microsoft, Halo Collection, Sea of Thieves, all those games. Even though Sea of Thieves has corrected itself, so I should probably go and re-review that, right? Maybe I should. Maybe I should start the re-review phase. But yeah. So we get all this, just so everybody knows, the behind the scenes of all this is, all this kind of stuff is pretty much a part of the industry that we're aware of. It does suck, but it does happen. And understanding that it happens means you're able to navigate a little bit better. If you put your foot in the sand, pretend this kind of stuff is not real, then you end up in a situation where you can't defend yourself if something pops up. You can't look at it at least somewhat objectively and figure out a way around it, whether it be a company not liking you and saying, hey, listen, you know, you may not like this. I felt it was fair. And you can email them that. You can say, I felt this was fair. I know you guys may have an issue. I would love to review your game. I just haven't had that pop up very much, but I know it does, and it's popped up for me occasionally. So it's like, you should mention it, and you should say, you know, this is a thing. When it comes to leaks and stuff, it has affected a bunch of shit, though. That's the unfortunate part of all this. By the way, I want to point out before we even start this, I affected the industry. When I had the 8-hour early break for Redfall, that devastated some people.
Like
the one time. But I'm going to tell you, it devastated me because I know it devastates people. And so the idea that everybody is ready, they're ready for something, they probably know what they're getting. That's one thing. But if you surprise them 8 hours ahead and you're a larger YouTube channel like mine, that's devastating for somebody. And I don't want some texture artist on Redfall to be devastated by it. That fucking sucked. And within a week, I started to see embargoes that stated, reminder, the date for this review is blah, blah, blah. And it happened a couple days ago with another game where I got a reminder that I wasn't even reviewing the game, but it was a reminder. And I realized somebody had broken an embargo by a couple hours on another game. And so you get those. So I've adjusted the industry on accident as well. But this has adjusted it, man. We're starting to get changes already. There's already been companies, like, I didn't even know there was an issue until I woke up and the DMs on Twitter had exploded. And I thought I did something on some. I was like, oh shit. Somebody, like, I said something during a podcast and somebody's like, oh, he definitely hates, you know, Johnny or something. Like, I had no clue what was going on. And I go in as companies saying, we want to talk to you about investigation on leaks for these past games. Because now companies are looking at past games and going, where have leaks happened here? Because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. They take it serious. That's affecting everybody. And that sucks. It's probably just because looking at it as a business, it'll affect all of us as well. When it comes to, you know, who gets games, how long they get them. And unfortunately for Maddie, same thing that happened with me. I know just because we've been hearing about it, there are definitely people who are like that. They will never get code again because regardless, you're the front. You're the person who handles the signing. When I was working with Absy, I had to be like, Absy, man, like, you're on the NDA. This is, you can't, nobody can get this because I suffer every penalty for the rest of my life.
The buck ends with you. Like, you know, if I breach the NDA because you gave me a code to collaborate with you, it's ultimately a reflection on you, right?
Yeah. Good question. Jamel says, do they give you embargo times in your specific time zones? So what they do is they usually list a bunch.
That must be chaotic if like...
They do. And for example, I have a review that I can release at any time because I think review embargo is passed for it. And I'm getting ready to, it's almost done. But I saw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 time zones in a row. So you have to identify which time zone's yours. Then you have to identify.
Triple check, like, okay, so...
time, what is it called? The time slip, the adjustment of time that we're dealing with right now, where you roll your clocks ahead or backwards. So you got it. You definitely have to watch it. But yeah, so this is affecting everybody. It's a real thing. Companies take it serious. Remember, Rockstar went after somebody when they leaked stuff. These companies, they went after me when my embargo went early. They contact me, you know, and you have to deal with those things. And yeah, everybody knows about this stuff and it is trying to figure out what to do in the future. It sucks, but I think it was pretty bound to happen just because of the digital way we do everything. You upload something to Google, you upload something to OneDrive. Is there a chance somebody hacks something? There's all this kind of stuff. So it's just one of the things. What were you going to say?
No, I was just curious if you feel similar to like Fextra Life, because they were saying, oh, we are a very big channel. The fact that we didn't get a code means, you know, we're like specifically being selected out for something. Do you, because you're a big channel too, do you ever read into it like, hey, I wasn't given a code because of like something you said, or maybe they consider you a high risk reviewer, something.
Yeah, Cyberpunk. Whatever's happened here is nothing compared to what occurred with Cyberpunk. I don't even know what happened. It was so chaotic. But there was definitely something weird that happened there that after tracking it, I'm like, okay, that is untrustworthy from this moment on. Going into the future, entirely different safeguards have to be used, or more have to be applied with that particular situation that's going on there, for sure. Have there been others? Yeah, but most of the time, nobody's owed a code, so who gives a shit? IGN occasionally doesn't get codes. I don't know why. I have no clue. But I would say that if somebody says they don't get codes, most of the time, it is social signaling. They want to tell everybody, I don't have a code. And usually what I'll do is I'll do it on Twitter, sometimes afterwards now, because if I do it prior, I'm like, this sounds a little like, hey, I didn't get code, sort of trying to quest out there and see if somebody's going to give you one. And the idea that I usually do is do after. If it's a big one and people keep questioning, then I will probably post it. But it just depends. But a video? No, I've actually done, I think it was Horizon Zero Dawn 1. I didn't get a code until a little bit later, and people kept asking me. And so I did a video and was like, no one's owed a code. I didn't get a code. Like, there's no way to track it. You didn't get a code. I don't have any idea why not. How small does a company have to go? If everybody writes reviewer after their name, do you just give every single, because you know what every gamer's going to do? They're going to put up a blog. They're going to put up a blog, call themselves a reviewer, and ask for a code. And that's already sort of happening.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I have no clue.
Blog.
Yeah, I have no clue, why they did that or how they did it. But I will also say, from what I've seen, the big thing I hear, and I don't know if people in Shadow agree, but I do want to say one of the things that I thought was interesting is I saw people saying the reviews for Dragon Age are divergent. There's so contrasting. I'm like, no, they're not. Go look at any game. There is always somebody who reviews something super high and somebody who reviews something super low. Even games I've said are terrible, I will go and find a review and there will be somebody who gives it a 9 and I'll be like, dude, the game didn't even work. Like, your main character doesn't even, whatever it may be, there's always something there. So you always get this kind of thing where and that's really the outrage people trying to get you to join up. The outrage people are like, hey, look at this. And it's going to happen after this. I'm not even talking, you can ignore Dragon Age. You can look at any game. Go look on Twitter. You will always see somebody saying, oh my God, look at how, spread out these reviews are. And it's like, that's why there's an aggregate. If you believe in aggregates, that's why it's there, because it does do that. It averages out and tries to give you a generalized idea, tries to remove the 10s and the 9s and the lows and tries to figure out what the general consensus is. And seems like the general consensus here is it's pretty good to average, which I'm not 100% sure. Not 100% sure what I feel about that.
Would you say BioWare is back?
No.
Would you get behind that statement? No.
BioWare is
another entity altogether.
Yeah. And I know we hear that repeated now, but I do feel pretty proud of saying this. I think like in Mass Effect 2 or something, I was like, whatever you guys are expecting, enough people have left. Things have changed. You just sort of have to roll with it. But the BioWare that you grew up with when their first games are not the same. And then that changed. Then the, doctors left and it's like things completely, absolutely adjusted. No, they're not the same. And that's fine to say. They might be better at some future point. There's nothing wrong with saying that. But it's not the same. And BioWare's a name, right? They're a name.
Yeah.
It's why you always hear me say, oh yeah, Diablo, people like this Diablo or whatever. It doesn't mean the next one will be great. It's what happened with Witcher 3. And by the way, people were so mad when when Cyberpunk was announced. I was like, we don't know. It's a different game, completely a different viewpoint from an IP that's completely different. How do we even understand or even think that the process is all going to come together perfectly? And it didn't. But no, they're not the same. They're their own thing now. And maybe it doesn't appeal to me anymore, which is sad. But
yeah,
Larian's there for those people, and I think a lot of people will be asking themselves that question in 3 or 4 years when they release their next game, depending on who leaves and who stays at that company. are they the same? Depends on if your writers stick around and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's that for the behind the scenes. But yes, this has changed the reviewing situation pretty drastically. And I do appreciate people sticking with me, even though I didn't get that review done. I know I saw a couple people get mad at me and Patreon and leave. I get it, but I thought I was pretty clear. I guess I wasn't, but I don't get every game. That's just the way it goes. So if you got to leave Patreon, hey, that's the way it is. But I'm not going to get every game, and we're certainly not always going to agree. Like, that's, I think, the most important thing. Even Johnny and I don't agree, and I know him better than I know any of you guys. Oregon Fresh says he gives a lot of shit in our review comment. I talk trash in Carrick's comments. I don't even see those. I did see you in Discord, but you left, so whatever. So you don't matter anymore. Just joking, Oregon. Still love you. SDG says, I had heard the level of talent has changed with a lot of these studios. Games made years ago are unfortunately not the same. Yeah, and games made during are not the same. Look what just happened with Wolverine. Did you see that, Johnny?
Yep.
Yeah, the Wolverine main creative juice behind Rise of Tomb Raider, Spider-Man 1 and 2, Wolverine is now working on Perfect Dark for Xbox. So, especially where Wolverine is, what impact is that going to have?
Yeah, and those are some big shoes to fill for the Wolverine team. It worries me because we were talking about also, okay, what does it mean for, sorry, I'm blanking on the
Wolverine,
name.
For Insomniac?
Not Wolverine, the other one, the game he's moved to now.
Perfect Dark?
Perfect Dark.
Mm-hmm.
So we were talking like, what does it mean for Perfect Dark to have a completely different direction now?
Right. Yep.
But I'm actually more worried about what does it mean for the Wolverine team to now have to replace someone who is hard to replace, right? In this situation.
Yeah.
And, how far along are they? Can they even make super significant changes now? All that type of stuff.
It's a good
point,
point,
they can
dude.
land it, but yeah.
It's a good point. And all I would suggest is to watchers who don't believe this, I'm hoping everybody understands how shit works. But any NFL team changes, even with a guard that you may not hear about, if they move, things adjust. Our podcast, when people leave or come in, it adjusts. That's quite literally how it works in a team effort. Hell, I adjust my review style. That adjusts, and that's just me. Because I get really bored of doing the same thing. So it's like, dude, if that can happen to us in small creative endeavors that take 2 weeks, what do you think is going to happen in 5 years? Of course that will happen. And technology may, come into it. The social zeitgeist is definitely, absolutely changing, games as we go forward. I mean, dude, I can tell you when I play an old game, there are games that I'm playing that I'm like, oh, wow, that wouldn't be acceptable anymore. But it still doesn't even bother me because it's an old game, like it doesn't bother me. But what's up, Alejandro? Yeah, so it's just one of those situations where, yeah, they changed. I don't think they're the same. Larian's pretty close to the same, like Divinity, Original Sin, Divine Divinity, which is my favorite. They've been somewhat the same, but, they've lost people. They've added people. Baldur's Gate 3 is going to sort of explode things out, so we're going to see how that affects people. Will people take really good resumes from Baldur's Gate 3 and decide to create their own thing somewhere? Yes. How many times have you had a success and you're like, oh, the team's going to stick together to do blah, blah, blah version 2, and 3 people leave, and you're like, dude, why are you leaving? Everything worked out great. What are you doing? And they're like, well, because it did work, and I can use that to do the thing I want to do over here. And you're all, oh, all right, I get it. I don't want you to leave. But success, that sort of pushes you to, identify other creative endeavors that you can enjoy.
And everybody's on their own journey. So who knows, like the Wolverine guy, sorry, I forgot his name, the director, right, who left. Maybe he was after something different because he's been doing, like you said, Spider-Man 1, 2, other stuff there with the team. Maybe he's after something different. And
dude, he absolutely could be, man. Somebody could have, he could have seen something Perfect Dark is doing and thought, I have less. Let me give you an example. IP. Wolverine's IP is restrictive. It just is. You can't have Wolverine completely change whatever. We're talking sexuality. You can't do that.
Or like
tone, whatever. That's Wolverine, and you have 80,000 people with their little grubby fingers in there saying this character is a staple. We're moving forward. Perfect Dark, on the other hand, if I was a creative and I was writing, I was like, oh, I feel sort of clamped in here. I got to figure out. There's some awesome feeling when you're clamped in, because you have to be even smarter with your writing and be even more creative with how you can make it surprising. It pops up, Perfect Dark pops up, and he's like, dude, this is great. I can go over here and create an entire world. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Like nothing at all. Yeah. It's weird, man. I'm excited for it. I'm excited for Perfect Dark. You know, we saw what I would consider to be a fake trailer. I still was excited about what I saw, but I mean,
we don't know.
Yeah.
It would be awesome if a lot of it were actual gameplay, but it was so cut up that the fact is we don't know how much of it.
Yeah, we don't know. Hermit J says, who's the best dev studio?
Oof.
Who is the best dev studio? Let's not, there's so many indies, it's hard to know. But so I'm going to go with like a double A or triple A, because there's definitely some, okay. I was going to say, current, what do you, if you're, Jay, if you're asking, because you know what I would say? No Man's Sky now, because we're seeing a great deal of continued investment and creation in No Man's Sky. But best development team probably doesn't fit them. Best.
Maybe Rockstar.
Yeah. And do you know why, dude? They're herding cats, not a small number. They're herding cats that somehow speak in a completely different meow language across the nations. It feels like billions of them. And they still, it may take a long time, but they're still able. I guess that shows you what resources and money can do. But,
whole towns of people like coordinating for years.
Yeah. And then SDG says, or even Techland, due to their support for their games. Absolutely. Techland just released a bunch of stuff for their games now. I mean, yeah, it's an interesting question. You could say FromSoft in a way, but I think FromSoft, I think the honest truth is I loved Elden Ring, but I think FromSoft is very stuck. There's a specific thing they do. And even when they adjusted it for open world, our surprise was that they stuck to what they do, but they made it open world. So, but I still think they're amazing. Like, I would say Insomniac is up there. I honestly would. I would say, even though I had some issues, Insomniac is a hell of a team. I think, man, that's a hard one. Yeah. I guess there's probably not an answer. It really depends on if you're talking tech level or if you're talking about deliveries, because if you're talking about deliverables, Rockstar can't be on there because it takes them 85 years to release a game. Yeah, dude, my grandpa was like fighting in World War II when they released their first game, is what I feel like. Those guys are so spread out now, man. It's nuts.
If you talk about technical, Naughty Dog is really good. They're awesome at squeezing the hardware to get like insane presentation.
Can I mention something? Too, Cheese's Crust and some others are saying Yakuza. Let me say, I absolutely agree with the thought process, but can we just point out that the Yakuza devs reuse and do the same stuff that most other channels will bitch about, and it shows such almost like not a fetish, but a blank spot in a lot of people's ideas that we attack some companies, but then Yakuza will release the same style of game, same textures in the game, things that we see other people bitching about when it's a sequel. And these guys, which I love their games, they'll release these, but they don't get the same level of scrutiny. And that does bother me, even though I really love all their games. I love their games. I've loved every one of them.
Dual standard with some JRPGs, or actually a lot of them. The super lengthy JRPG series, where you have like, well, what's the one Reg plays? Trails?
Yeah, Trails.
Trails.
Well, he plays both. He plays
both. And you have like,
what is it? Tales and Trails. Yeah.
Over 10 games in those series, and they're all pretty much like, I'm not gonna say the same thing, but they're following the same template to some extent, right? They're evolving over time, but Dragon Quest, they're all very similar to each other too.
Right.
And people don't complain because folks in that niche love those games for what they are, and they want the next one to be just that. And that's where the Yakuza enjoyers are at, I think, mentally. But for some reason, maybe because AC games, for example, are more mainstream, so it's not a niche anymore.
Right.
Maybe people expect them to evolve more. I don't know.
You could say that, but I've seen small devs getting shit for a sequel that's a fairly small sequel, like a dev the size of, I mean, we're talking, 10, 15 people, like Plague Tale, they're at 70 now, 80. But I'm talking about smaller ones getting shit for using a texture on a rock that's the same. And you're like, dude, it's a rock. At some point, can we just all agree that as long as the design is good, we're okay with this? And this, I think the first time we brought this up, it was almost 3 years ago. And it might have been a video where I was teasing the watchers because I had seen some people and I was like, yes, by the way, I think it might have been Metro Exodus. I can't remember which game, but I brought up, I was like, yes, by the way, you're going to see some repeated textures here from a game that they released. I noticed the same texture. That's fine. But you definitely see with Yakuza in particular, a complete detachment for that.
Yeah.
And you'll see excuses everywhere. It's like, we can't make excuses. There is no excuse. It's either we go after them or we fucking don't. And I'm okay with not, especially on that stuff. Like, I saw somebody who said, I broke down the M16 shooting sound in this game, and it may be the same M16 shooting game or sound in this other game, that it might be a store asset. And I'm like, dude, it's an M16 shooting sound. If they rub some dirt on there and they have it environmentally stable and it sounds like it's from the environment, that is great. Because at some point, if you have a good sound, use that fucking thing. Because how many games don't have good shooting sounds? Division.
Well, it's like reinventing the wheel. If you have a great wheel, like, you don't need to do a rectangular one or like try a different.
Yeah. It's such a weird thing with Yakuza. And as somebody who loves them, I love their games. I think I've loved every one of their games. I mean, no, actually, the Samurai one wasn't as high up in my list.
Yeah, because it was also a remake of an older one.
Yeah. And I'm not, we're just so anybody listening, because I can envision the iTunes comments or whatever. We're not talking about people who, just throw a bunch of assets into a game. It's not that. That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Even though technically, if you go that way, guess who repeats more than most? The Yakuza games. You go into a store, it's the same damn noodle texture that's been used for ages in a lot of places. So it's like, if we do go that far, it actually aims at a target that I think a lot of people don't want it to go at for some reason. It's like, dude, just separate it, Oregon Fresh says, thank you. Division's guns sound whack. They're weak. I don't know if they're whack, but they're weak. Yeah. Moving on from there. So that's the close up of that. Some inside baseball on what's going on with reviews and codes and investigations that'll occur. Changes that you may see. You may hear more people saying they didn't get code for stuff that might change. We just, no one really knows. This kind of stuff adjusts, and hey, maybe everybody will forget. I don't think so, because while we were talking, I got an email about it. So apparently not. But overall, I think for many of us, we know how this is going to go, at least for a little while. Next up, Monster Hunter Wilds. So give me your honest thoughts, Monster Hunter Wilds.
So I haven't played. I've just watched people play it.
Mm-hmm.
I think so far it looks exactly like what we expected, which is Monster Hunter World, taking a few learnings from Rise,
right?
Adding some of the verticality and like the stuff you can do with the dog and everything, which is cool. And more open with the the open areas and everything. Right. I like that. I think it's exactly what we want from it so far. It's Monster Hunter. The weapons play exactly like they always do, because it's always the same ones. I don't know if they have new ones in this one, but
yeah, I think
overall
it's the same.
I like the fact that you can carry two, right? Based on what I've seen, you can, or I heard. I actually haven't seen it in practice, but I heard you can carry two different.
You can.
Weapons,
that's what I heard.
Which is great, because then you can have, because oftentimes as a great sword enjoyer myself, I've felt like it was pretty unfair, because my weapon is great in some situations, but absolutely terrible in others. However, other weapons are just always consistently fine. Like, for example, the daggers, right? the dual blades, forget exactly the name, you will always do great with them. They're fast. You can always consistently deal damage. Doesn't matter what the type of the move set is of your enemy. With the great sword, sometimes you'll just be boned, and it will be very difficult to deal damage to certain enemies. And I always felt that was a little bit unfair. And I think now at least you have the option. Like, hey, the great sword is not working out with this guy or in this phase or whatever. I'm going to pull out the kitchen knives and get in there.
I made this comparison. So we did a big podcast yesterday. A bunch of us were in the Discord, and I made this comparison. I want to see if it fits to what you think. So I feel that Monster Hunter Wilds is Capcom's version of Elden Ring, in the fact that it's taken what they've tried for a long period of time. They've identified things that were missing, larger world, dual weapons, certain things, and they've moved it into a game that isn't necessarily going to change a bunch of stuff up, but it's a larger world, the ability to camp while you're farther out, which then indicates that if you can camp while you're farther out, having two weapons makes sense because you're probably going to overextend yourself, and we want you to experience the wilds, so we're going to give you two weapons. To me, this is sort of exactly what I expected when they announced it. Was like, I've seen this template before in a weird way. Is that it really has gone back. They've looked at all their side games, all their games, and said, okay, these are all the things we want to do. But since we're doing it into a bigger world, there are some changes we're making. And the camping thing is a big one. And certainly the dual weapons. That's got to be one of the largest. Because I think I think a lot of people might have been like, oh man, what if I go out there with the wrong weapon? So they didn't experiment. And this game isn't just about experimentation, because they shelter experimentation in the actual experience by saying you can have two weapons and it's a world that is more expansive. So you're like, okay, so experimentation isn't special. They're not telling you you're worse, you need to experiment. They're saying it fits within the entire framework of the game now. And I think that that's a masterful stroke from them to say, we've made these changes. You can experience more. You can do more. It's a wider world. There's larger stuff. There's more stuff. There's all these things that we want. And because of all that, you can also have two weapons, which is a major change. I mean, two weapons might be the bigger change when you really look at how everything works and what people talk about. For example, Johnny, I don't know how many times we've been talking about the original games, and you were like, oh man, I investigated the same rock for 2 hours. That doesn't pop up. But what does pop up is somebody trying to get better and better with a sword. So to me, having the two weapons is a much larger change than really the open world. But what do you think? Like, do you think that comparison's good, or do you think it's too broad, or?
No, I think that's exactly right. They're opening it up and making it more about experimentation and reducing the friction for experimentation. Because before, what needed to happen is you need to go into a completely new mission, change your weapon, right? Change your loadout and everything. There was quite a bit of friction. Of course, you could change like mid, you could go to the tent or whatever, mid mission. But the reality of how it played out most times is that you had your main loadout and that's it. You were good with one weapon. And I think the fact that it is open, and you might say, well, now I'm going out to hunt this other monster, makes sense to now, switch to my secondary, or maybe have a set of two other weapons for that. Yeah, it just kind of makes it so much more dynamic. The feeling that you're going out on a hunt as opposed to going out on a mission is the vibe I got,
Yeah.
So you camp out, you get ready for a hunt, but you're in the map kind of, rather than like going back and out.
Yeah. It just feels like the stretch is there. We'll have to see how it all plays out, because I booted it up, played a little bit, realized it is a little heavier than I was expecting, CPU, GPU wise. Even with a powerful system, I was like, ooh, those frame rates are not exactly what I expected. And then started going elsewhere and finding more people were saying the same thing. Not necessarily problems as much as sort of the Capcom's got a couple issues, including Dragon's Dogma 2. It doesn't have those issues where one specific area is terrible. It's got an issue where all the numbers are just a little lower than you might expect. That's sort of a nerdgasm kind of thing, right? That's like neither here nor there in the general discussion of the game. But the general discussion of the game is they've added a bunch of stuff. There's a stretchiness to the experience that reminds me, again, until I play it, I can't say this is 100% right or not, but it reminds me of what I felt in Elden Ring, where the experimentation was just a little less cumbersome. It was just a little easier to jump into. And all a lot of gamers are looking for is just a tiny bit of that. Just a tiny bit. Like, you know, sometimes you'll hear somebody, you've done this, I'm sure, not done it, but heard it. You'll have somebody say something and you realize they're complaining about the smallest subset, but they can't get over it. It's like that little tiny texture on a rock looks the same, and therefore everything after it is terrible. And you're like, yeah, okay, I get that. But if you just walk over the rock, you might be able to experience something unique and new. And luckily, Capcom and some other companies are starting to realize that they can help that sort of plan along, which is good.
I think so. I think they've also learned that the expeditions in Monster Hunter World were terrible. The times where you needed to go out and like look for, 3 footprints or of a dog somewhere. That was super annoying and pointless. That got better with Rise. Looks like it's better here as well, more integrated into the hunts themselves.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. I have some questions from patrons. These are short, only got 3. Mr. says, what does the huge Dragon Age leak mean for you or the industry in general? We did cover that. We covered that. General Chaos says, the more I watch reviews, the more I see a handful of disclaimers that always seem like it's an excuse for them to say what they want to say. You see a handful of disclaimers. I don't know what that means. A handful of disclaimers. You see.
Is it like when people say they got a code or they went to a preview?
No, I think he's saying like when somebody says, like, everybody likes different games, or this is my opinion, or what have you. So, yeah, I could see that. To an excuse for saying what they want to say. I don't think any reviewer worth their salt has to do a disclaimer to say what they want to say. Because if you have to, that means to me, you are in some dire shit if you are like having to do that. I will say that there are reminders, though, that you can give sometimes that will align a conversation a little bit more easily, where you're like, hey, just so you know, I don't play a bunch of NFL games. So this is my first review for an NFL game in a while. So I may not know exactly what you may know about the last 55 NFL games that are pretty much the same game. I can see that.
I think the difference is that adds context. So that's a valuable introduction to a review.
Yeah.
Because that frames how you're going to receive the data.
Right.
But I've seen, legit, like one of the most prominent independent reviewers that people were mentioning in chat, he spent 30 seconds in the beginning saying that, this is just his opinion and it shouldn't count more than anyone else's, yada, yada. And that to me felt a little bit like, hey, what I'm going to say you might not like. Remember, it's my opinion. And I think that's just, that's what it is. That's your review.
That is what it is. Yeah. Yeah. But they're probably already prepared for something big to blow up. And the larger the game, see, again, because I didn't track it and because in all honesty, I just don't give a fuck. So there will be times where I'll say that, but it's, for the most part, you already know a reviewer who's reviewing, it's their opinion. Otherwise, it wouldn't make any sense. Yeah. And I've told you that you will get people who say, I can't believe Carrick liked this game. No one else liked it. And I'm like, yeah, but you follow me because I'm my own person. I'm going to say what I like and what I dislike. My context, really the score means very little to me. In the long run, it's the context that I'm trying to give to somebody who's listening so they can say, okay, Carrick does not like this at all. He doesn't like this situation. He doesn't like the story. He doesn't like whatever. But guess what? Everything he described, actually, for whatever reason right now, I like. So that score to me doesn't mean very much. It's really just me saying, did I feel ripped off? Yes, no. And at what level? And here's all the context prior. But yeah, I don't think you need to do that kind of stuff. That is very weird. Yeah. Let's see. People are talking about Sea of Stars. I asked people what they were playing. Nick says currently playing DBZ Kakarot Sparking Zero. Got me in the mood for more Dragon Ball. Cantanker says he's playing Sea of Stars. It's enjoyable. Played a few hours. Quite a bit of Chained Echoes as well. Lots of Black Ops 6. Had an ACG in my team last night and kept yelling at him. I don't think it was you. No, it was it wasn't me, but that is funny that you had an ACG. Yeah, dude, we do. We do have a lot. We do have a lot. Let's see. I'm not going to say names in the people generalization, but some people care more about backlash to reviews. Yeah, I would say generally there are people who have to live in a certain whatever, and they, backlash to a review does suck, especially if you're just trying to tell people whatever. But yeah, who knows? It's a thing. Ultimate Game Club says people in reviews are too positive about any game in general. Games are often so broken and messes at launch. Yeah, and some aren't. Also, people in reviews doesn't really make sense because a lot of times, for example, I review like 100 games in a year. There are 1,700 released on Steam a month. That's just Steam. So the idea that people are more positive is not necessarily a really good way to frame it. It could be that you need to switch reviewers you watch, including myself, if you find people giving in to things that you don't think they should give into. Just depends. Playing Easy Red 2? Never heard of that. Do you mean Red Dead 2? By the way, did you see Red Dead? We got it. Remaster. PC. It's out. It's out,
Wait,
dude.
It's already out?
It's out. It came out yesterday or the day before. I've already played about 2 hours. Seems to work really well.
Oh, damn.
Just crazy that it finally came out because it was such a mess.
How does it look?
See that. Like an old Red Dead game.
No. Oh.
No. Dude, the textures in Red Dead are so nasty. It's such an old game, and they upscaled stuff, all that. It runs really well for the most part.
That's good. Yeah.
But man, that game, it's lighting, the design, the ideas that they have are so grandiose and so excellent, and they feel like a modern game in that way. But the moment you walk around the game world and you look anywhere, you're just like, damn, son, that is raw. There's a lot of raw. Kind of like
a Switch game or something.
It's pretty bad, man, especially when you're playing on the PC and your brain is telling you, oh, when I get this and put it on my brand new PC, 24 gigs of RAM or whatever on my video card, it's going to be great. And then you load it up and you're like, oh, right. Yeah. I guess they're not really actually going to improve anything.
It's not like the remake of what was it, San Andreas? The disaster ones? Or like
nope, it's not even in the same sphere. Not even it's good.
Yeah.
That's what's
different.
But
it is the game. It's not like they revamped anything spectacular.
Yeah, unfortunately, because there are some things that feel pretty crusty in it. But such is life. Like that it's okay. That can happen. But yeah, it's out. It's crazy to see that. It's awesome. I love the idea that we're finally getting it and getting to play it. And mods are going to come out. There's already a couple mods for it that adjust their face. And I think it puts another person's face on his face, which I find haunting. I think there's one or two that remove his stubble. But there was somebody that added an anime to the movie theater. So you can go to the movie theater and watch an anime instead of the old black and white real film that they had in the original game. So Jesus Crust says, you guys think there'll be any big mods for Red Dead? I do. I think texture mod's your first one. Yeah. I can't see anybody not doing a texture mod, right? That just seems...
That's cool. Yeah,
that seems insane. Next up, indie previews, man. Did you see any of these Indiana Jones previews?
I did.
What do you think?
I am not very excited for it personally.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I probably will play it. I think I've liked most of the games those guys have done.
Machine games.
Especially Wolfenstein 2 was fantastic. So I'm down. And I like indie, Indiana Jones. Some of that like cheesy, creepy action stuff. I do find it fun. Looks like they did a good job with getting the vibe of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the gameplay, I'm not too sold on it, I would say. I think I really will have to try it out, see if it is fun or different.
Yeah. Dude, this game is it's unique in so many different ways. I legit have no clue what it's going to be or how it's going to be reviewed. But some of the humor nailed it for me as a, as an indie fan or what have you. His voice is fine, got no issue. In fact, I think he does a better voice here than in many other games where he's trying to be somebody different. Actually, I have no issue with that.
Troy Baker, right?
Mm-hmm.
In this one?
Yeah. The first person view, they've stated very clearly this was their heritage and they wanted to go for it. And now we see multiple people at the preview saying, actually, that makes sense when you start playing it. But I really need to dive in and see like just how it plays, man, because there's so many difficulties. The whip is difficult. Like, how do you do the animation for a whip in first person? How do you make distance make sense? Because some of the video I've seen of that looks a little hedgy. All this kind of stuff. I'm really excited just to get my hands on it to finally see how it hits because, dude, it's so weird when you think about it. Indiana Jones is what spawned Tomb Raider, which is what spawned Uncharted. And now Indiana Jones is finally trying to make a game that can't show too much of a similarity between Tomb Raider and between Uncharted, or it gets claimed as a copycat of those. And you're like, we have gone.
And it's also first person. So a lot of things in those games wouldn't work that well. Like even the climbing, it doesn't work that well in first person if you have the climbing in the way you do in Uncharted and
That's
stuff.
A good point.
If you're looking at the highly visible ledges painted and all that type of stuff.
Right.
It really doesn't work too well first person. Like you said, the combat, is it gonna be a bit almost dizzying if it's super
That's
fast
a good point.
and you're whipping people?
Yeah, that's a good point.
How does it all work? Yeah, we'll have to see. Tough one.
Dude, I just in all the years I've been playing games, I never expected an Indiana Jones game to be first person though. What if it's awesome? I'd be excited as hell, man.
If it's awesome and it opens up a whole new thing of like, hey, first person,
Yeah. Yep. If anybody can nail first person like this, it is them. I feel like this makes sense in what they said, but dude, it's got so many questions. There's so many questions, so many idiosyncrasies a developer has to nail for the first person part. And that's not when it's indie, who by actual definition doesn't shoot very often. And when he does, it becomes an entire part of a movie when he does shoot somebody. Like that's what's even crazier is that the joke, the meta of that is, for example, when you see him in the movie where he ends up shooting the swordsman, he was sick, shot the swordsman because he was tired. He didn't want to do a full battle. That became the meta for that character for the longest time. Like that's the thing. Even when he's in the later movies, they don't show him really hitting anybody with bullets very often. So now you have a game where, let's be honest, most gamers expect guns to impact and kill the bad guy and you to be rewarded for it, ultimately.
True.
And yet this will probably be a lot of stealth, which is what I've also heard, is that it's a lot of stealth. So yeah, I'm excited just to see. Be like, I want to get my hands on it because I'm also all for companies trying out, trying to aim for something that maybe I don't expect.
Maybe you fail the mission if you kill people, like in stealth games sometimes.
That's going to kill me though, man. That's going to dude, of all the games, look at what happened with Outlaws, man. Outlaws was ridiculous. You would go in and you would barely go out of the area, or one guy would see you and the entire mission was over.
Go there.
You're just like, oh, dude. Yeah. It's difficult to figure out exactly how they're going to do it. I'm excited for it. I think those guys make good games generally, and I think that they understand first person. So what do you guys think in chat? Are you guys like, I see some people saying the same thing I've said where they just sort of need to get hands on, but that's because we have a pretty good chat. They're pretty aware that like a game can surprise you. I think that's the thing, man, is we say we want surprise, and the moment we get introduced to surprise, everybody has a tendency to shelter back. They bunker back and are like, how dare, like, we don't want change. And you're like, dude, we've been complaining about change for ages. Let them do it and see what happens. And the industry will sort it out if it doesn't work out.
You were almost going to say, let them cook. for a second.
No, I
but
was
then,
not going to say let them cook. But now you put that in my brain. Now I'm going to say that word and you're going to make me mad. I'm just joking. But I was going to say one thing. It does remind me of surprise, letting a company surprise you, but it doesn't always work out. And we see that with Concord. They shut down the devs.
Yeah.
Dude.
And I think you said it makes sense for them to go free to play, right? And resurface the game.
Yeah, free to play made sense to sort of see like what they had that was going to work. I think free to play would have made sense day one for sure.
Probably. Yeah, for that
without
type
a doubt.
of game.
Yeah, that game is now free to play. And Johnny, 5-6 years ago, man, did this look like a good idea though. That shows you how fast the industry changes, man. 5-6 years ago, pre-COVID, all that kind of stuff.
Like
you
the
absolutely
pitch
know.
good
The
way
pitch,
back in the
dude, of course it did. And we all know it did. Like we pretend because everybody likes to pretend that the data that they have today is the data they had 5 years ago. It doesn't exist. It's not how it works. If you go back 5 years ago and you see how good some of these games were doing and how there were openings in some of those games that have now been patched out because those developers continue to work, what have you. If you look back at that and you were in that pitch and you were like, we have Sony-backed money, we have their name, we have really good graphics, we have this idea, whether we agree with the stylized graphics, I'm not a big fan, but all that kind of stuff. We have this ability to nail this section, and now we see that, like, damn. I mean, the world changed and they didn't. Like, it's just, it's a part of life. It's a part of the games. And it sucks they went out of business, or it sucks that they were closed. It makes sense because it sounds like a bunch of them are moving to other companies within Sony, like other development houses. But I would have loved to have seen them try again on something. I think that's sort of the way every game I've ever liked has been the sequel, because the first game's usually rough on a lot of companies. And so, but we're not there anymore. It feels like you're one and done, especially if you're $200 million.
I applaud them for taking the hit and saying, listen, you know, it didn't work out how we wanted. We're going to go ahead and pull this, give you our money back. It didn't work out. You know, we're not going to be able to, doesn't make sense for us to dump a whole bunch of more resources into this. We'll have another crack at it. We'll circle back to you. I respect it. It sucks for the people who did love it. Like, okay, I'm not going to say like the 2 people who loved it, but you know, the 500 people who loved it.
Yeah.
You know, the game, they can't play the game anymore that they liked. But I think that's life sometimes, you know? The project didn't work out.
Yeah. Yeah, the project didn't work out. I mean, it just didn't. I liked Battleborn a lot. And I really enjoyed my time with Battleborn. I mean, a great deal. Way more than I would say probably most. And their shutting of that, and I think it could have been a year, could have been 6 months. I can't remember how long until Battleborn shut down. It could have been shorter, but it sucks because I really liked it. I would say with Battleborn, I don't know of anybody who felt as low about Battleborn as they did Concord. Concord definitely had some negativity attached to it when it got out. Like there were some people just being like, there's nothing in this, where a lot of people with Battleborn, they were like, oh, I like this, but there's other competition. With Concord, I think a lot of people looked at Concord and said, they're not even with the competition. They're like, they missed on a series of points. And very basic design is the main one I always see with characters, where people are just like, the characters didn't speak to them at all. And that's a real thing too. Like, how do you even know what character is going to speak to somebody, you know? And what you guys just mentioned this 2 podcasts ago, Borderlands used to speak to people, right? I think we can agree for the most part that especially something like Claptrap and many of the other characters in Borderlands do not speak to the majority of gamers anymore.
Yeah, not anymore.
Whether we've moved on or whether we want something different. I mean, I'm not dissing on Borderlands. I'm just saying that's a real legitimate thing where those don't speak to people. So yeah, dude, it's tough, man. It's tough. I would not want to make a game right now that took longer than 16 months. I would definitely be in the small group games, because the industry changes so fast. Entire companies switch places, go out of business, move to completely different areas of gaming, what have you. Look, by the way, talking to an RPG development team recently, I never thought about this until they mentioned it to me. They originally planned their game to be on all consoles. Do you know why? Because Final Fantasy at the time wasn't. And now Square has gone out and stated that they were planning on putting games on all systems, including Xbox. Yep. That actually impacted them. We were like, because they felt that there would be a somewhat unspoken to crowd on those systems that those games are not on, that they would be able to hit. And I was like, dude, that is a fair point. That is a point that almost no one will bring up because they won't even think about it. But it's like, they've been in business for 4 years, I think, working on this game. Haven't even announced it yet. And they're looking at it going like, oh, hey, we've got a spot where we can do well here and here. If we make sure to hit a good game, we've got a whole group that doesn't have something speaking to them on this other than, you have Tales of Arise, I think, was on both. You've got some games, but
yeah,
that's crazy, man. When you think about it, it's got to be tough to aim for something. That's why you should make a game for like the N-Gage. Something that's got like 8 users.
Something that's just not going to die out. Like, I think that's the thing with single player games. Like, we know people will still enjoy, even though there was the whole thing about single player games are dead, right? Like, people will still enjoy single player games 5 years from now. The shape of them might be different. And for sure, you would need to adapt and be agile as you develop a 3-year project. But I think with multiplayer, it's a lot more complex because the shape of a multiplayer game changes so wildly in a year. What's successful this year compared to outside of Fortnite, because Fortnite is always successful. But that's the lightning in the bottle, the exception to the rule, not the thing you should aim for.
Dude, and you hit the nail on the head, because the other thing when you look at this is you can't even guarantee another game is coming from a different developer because the current developers are adding entire modes into their games. You have Dead Island, which added stuff. You have Dying Light 2, which added a bunch of stuff. So if you are headed towards a particular type of game where you're like, nobody else is doing this with their multiplayer game or their service game, and 2 years from now, Ubisoft has patched that into Division. Diablo's patched in something, whatever the big new thing is. Roguelike is certainly, I think we're coming off the tail end, but for a while there, everything was roguelike. It was everything. Yeah. And the idea of building something new and you're getting ready, and then you find out that the companies that have been there and have a good, vested, somewhat successful economy, somewhat successful crowd playing their title, and they announce they're adding it to your game, and you're like, oh my God, that must suck. Man, that would suck. Oregon Fresh says, did Black Ops have an update today? New modes and maps? I'm not aware, sir. So I asked everybody what they were playing and what they were talking about in chat. Let's see. Spiders wouldn't be able to give us Greedfall or Steel Rising without Technomancer or Mars Wars logs. That is Jamal bringing the truth. Good for you, man. Not only good for you for just mentioning games I like, but also the idea that that's a small dev, or medium-sized dev, what have you. They've never once fully nailed it, but they have got close enough times that I think all of the games you mentioned, I know big fans of. I'm a big fan of Technomancer. I'm a big fan of Greedfall, obviously. And so the idea that we get 4 games, even as they're improving, where there's people who like all of them, and then you have sort of that one last game that's like, boom. Dave Wilson says Nuketown on Black Ops 6, I'm pretty sure. Okay, well, there you go.
Oh, yeah, true. And there's also a bonus XP event, I've been told. So people grinding maps. Get in there.
Yeah, this goes to show, dude, this goes to show, people are asking me like, well, what's this? What's your level on this? What's your level on that? I'm like, I have no clue whatsoever. I just put some stuff on a gun that I think looks cool.
You don't follow that? Like, you're not grinding for specific things?
No, Baseball Gear he wasn't teasing me. He made me sort of laugh at myself. He started talking about dailies in Call of Duty last night. And I'm like, there's fucking dailies in Call of Duty? And he's like, yeah, I'm all, I don't know how. I think I just, especially when I'm playing with the guys in there, I'm just going to the things I want to do, and I'm ignoring all the flashy shit. If it pops up and it's like you have a daily or whatever, or you've completed a daily, most of my notifications are all off. whenever I can put any notification on my system off, it's off. So yeah, I didn't notice. But it was funny because it was two of them were in there, and they were like, there was a bunch of people playing, and they were, oh yeah, I did my dailies, and I clicked onto their video thinking it was like Diablo, and then I was all, oh wait, that's Call of Duty. Really? Seriously, I missed out on that.
Do you get the competitive bone in that game? Like when you play multiplayer maps and stuff, do you get like, like hyper focused and trying to improve your play and getting really into the details and being like super serious?
Yeah, the details for sure. For sure. Trying to figure out what works. I like to try weird shit. For example, I would say one of the best things I've ever seen is how Call of Duty Black Ops uses shadows to inform the gamer of where an enemy is. And there are times in like Skyline or what have you, that if you're watching closely, you can see an enemy coming in a good deal before they get there due to a shadow, due to a break in the light. You see it also in, I call it the KFC map, but there's a map where you're down the center. Maybe it's Rewind, I can't remember. But there's about 6 places there that if you look closely, light shafts will be broken by the enemy. And it is pristine. It is excellent design to let somebody use an effect that, by the way, didn't exist 10 years ago or 20 years ago. When you'd play Unreal Tournament, it was you were lucky if there was colored lighting of any kind. And to see that work, and by the way, I've gotten many a kill by paying attention to shadows. And then when you mention it in the chat, somebody's like, wait, what? And you're like, oh, come here, look at the shadow. And they're oh my God, I didn't even think about that. I'm so busy looking for people. I didn't even think that I could like look and see if there was possibly somebody behind a building. That kind of stuff I definitely get into, but not the competitive.
You don't get too sweaty, do you? Like
not like, in that. If it was Unreal, I would.
If someone is killing you over and over, there's like this guy on the enemy team who just like has your number and outplays you every time. You get like heated up.
Listen to this. It's a good point. And I'd love to know if anybody else feels this way. I never get mad at the person. Do you know what I get mad at? I get mad at Lady Luck identifying that we both went the same direction in the same place again and again. So I get mad at life. I do not get mad at the person. So if it was you and you killed me 8 times, I would be like, how in the did we both choose to continually be in the same place 8 times in a row? And it's probably because, like, especially when, like, I just don't believe too much in like rivalries overall when it comes to it. Maybe it was because of teaching, and you get accustomed where it's like those don't necessarily pan out because you're focusing on one guy. If your fight changes and you're fighting somebody else, good luck, because there's a good chance he was focusing on you. You were focusing on somebody else. Title gets changed or the fight gets changed, and suddenly the guy who's been training for multiple people at the top is better prepared than the person who's training for one defender at the bottom, or below them. So I don't get too bothered. But Lady Luck, yeah, man, I'll be in there. We were in chat a couple days ago, and this guy killed me like 3 times, and I was like, seriously, come on. How did you decide to go left? And I went left. Then I went right, and you went right. Then I went center. You weren't there for a second, but I turned around, and now you're on the right, and it's just the same name popping up. And you're like, come on, who's this guy? Yeah, that definitely happens.
It's really interesting because I do get pretty, what would you say? I very clearly have this picture in my mind that it's another person. And I want to take that person's soul. I want to like not just outplay, but I want to like, pee on their lawn or whatever.
Damn.
Take them out, pee in their lawn.
All right, I got it. I've got nothing but respect for that. Okay.
Like when I play, for example, League of Legends.
Oh God, here we go.
Dude, I'll be like, dude, I'm taking your soul. And if it doesn't work out, I get very angry at myself. I keep my cool, but internally I'm like, it's because it's also League is different because it's a snowball game. So if I kill you once, I'm now stronger. I have more items. So next time we fight, I now have an advantage. And if I kill you twice, now you're doomed, right? You're cooked.
And that also must feel worse when you don't kill them and they kill you, because you feel like you've topped off and they still killed you. And so now you're even madder because you're like, how the did that guy come out from? Yeah.
So there's something about, just to go back now to our conversation about Call of Duty. I don't get as sweaty in those games because there isn't the snowball aspect. Meaning,
makes sense.
If you're on the enemy team and you kill me once, well, guess what? Next time we run into each other, it will still be the same odds, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe I learned something, and maybe now I kill you instead. So there isn't that like big snowball element.
Yeah, dude. So I think there's a positive for both. Adrenaline, anger, focus, all that kind of stuff, especially in maybe that game where there's less enemies and it's, you know, it's sort of like a 3-lane where, you know, you look at a Call of Duty, you might have 6v6, you might have a bunch of people doing some random stuff. So there's a little bit of a difference. But I would say there's some huge positives to that, including maybe a little bit more focus that might occur. The thing that I like about being a little less that way is because what I've found is I can catalog stuff and talk while I'm playing. So, for example, when we were playing last night, I was explaining stuff to people and still doing really well. People were like, how are you fucking talking? Like, how are you randomly yakking, sliding over something? And it's because I'm compartmentalizing everything. And so it's, okay, I'm sliding over this, but I have a brief second where I don't have to worry about anything else because I know this move. I'm not frustrated by a person. And so therefore I can be like, actually, you should go get the power up and we'll come back here. And the other person can be like, okay, I'll go do that. And then you turn and you can still engage. But I would say that Unreal, for sure, I got...
Oh, more personal, more invested or something?
Yeah, because Unreal was my first big blossoming, here's your multiplayer moment. And and once I started getting even slightly good, I took it personal. I wasn't doing well.
And it was a huge skill gap. If you
there
were
was
good
because of the dual
right?
weapon types. Yeah. There was definitely it was a weird skill gap.
Stuff, like
there was some mechanical stuff.
Jump and stuff. Yeah.
Well, dude, there's a weapon in that game where you can shoot a glowing ball and then fire your gun's secondary. Your secondary is a glowing ball. You can fire your primary and blow it up. So I was starting to learn. So, for example, what I would do is if I saw a guy coming across a bridge, instead of killing him right away, I would count. And I'd be like 1,000, 2,000. I would see him at the door. And I'd be like, it takes approximately 2.2 seconds for that person to get to the door if I see them here running full speed. So then next time, even if I lost, I'd be like, I'm going to shoot the ball and time how long the ball takes to get to the door, fire that, and I can clear one guy. Then after a while, if you see two people going together, you're like, okay, I know where I need to be, shave off a second because they're closer. And so you do all that kind of stuff.
Like
and then in your head, you're like Hangover where you're doing the math. But it's the greatest. That kind of stuff is why I like having you guys come into the game with me, because then everybody's got different styles of play. Like Jay will get really quiet. That's when I know Jay is concentrating, because Jay cannot, this is nothing against Jay, this is the way he plays. When he's doing well, he's very quiet. And when he is trying to talk, he runs in a circle. He can't play and talk.
Oh,
so
I see.
So we will tease him for going in and out of a door while he's telling us a story. But when he focuses and is quiet, he's probably going to do better than 80-90% of the people, unless you've got a really good set and you're doing things well. So he plays it different. Then you have other people who are just generally not the greatest at it, but they're good at support, or they're good at following you and taking. No, I'm not going to say taking your kill, but you're shooting, you lose. But that person, but the person's right behind you, and so when that person's there, losing or beating you, they're losing to the person behind you. And so there's all those different things. And I love that. I think it's great. Kig says, let him cook. Heh, heh, heh. Kig with his little creepy laugh. Insta Big Fellas in UT 2004 are beyond godlike. One dude owned me so hard. Perfect positioning. Yeah, those are great, man. Those kind of games are awesome. What about racing games? People in chat, do you guys ever get stressed? I would say racing games, I get stressed. Racing games, do you know what? I get stressed the moment I know I'm in the last lap and I'm ahead. If I'm not ahead, no stress whatsoever. The very instant,
if you make one mistake,
dude,
you will lose it.
Yeah. And a lot of people, you're supposed to drive the track, but I think in games you can do both. And I usually will end up driving the driver. So if they're in front of me, I'll sort of be like, if their car's takes a little bit longer for a break, I sort of know. If they don't, I'm tracking that. And then when they're gone, it's back to you trying to absolutely optimize your lap, and you know, you that thing where you're driving and you're like trying to hit a button to see the rear view, but you don't want to take your fingers or your hands off anything. You're like, you're just driving, you're just fucking focused beyond all belief. That's when I definitely would say I get really anxious, like to the point where I have to drive, and then the moment it gets done, I'll be like scratching, you know, where your body starts just saying everything's wrong, and you're like, I can't move. Okay,
and
I'm
it's
done.
a terrible feeling
Scratch
if
your
you
face.
like make a mistake towards the end of the final lap, and then you know, 3 people pass yours.
Yeah, those are some rough times.
It blows.
There's Augusto says, I'm very bad at racing games, so I get very sweaty, and playing Wipeout VR, man, that game nearly broke me, but it was very immersive. Dude, hats off to you. Wipeout VR. Whew. Damn, that is a lot to take in a VR game. It's Wipeout originally, which is already fast and a lot of movement. Doing VR in that game, the idea of it just makes me sick. Ultimate Gamer Club says, guys, what do I tell my wife? Is BOG worth it? I mean, it's 80 pounds. Jesus, get Game Pass. Get it on Game Pass. Game Pass is what, 15? Or you can get a deal on it. I'm sure you can find a deal somewhere. Get it on Game Pass, play it, and decide from there. If you don't have a PC or a Xbox, that's a lot of, man, I don't know. That's a lot of money, and I haven't experienced a bunch. Well, I have, but I haven't loved everything else. I've enjoyed the campaign somewhat, and Zombies was a little lean for me. But yeah, I don't know. That's a hard question to ask. That's a lot of money, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it is Call of Duty. Do Call of Duties drop in price? Like, I never track.
I think they go on sale, for sure.
Yeah. SBZ says, you ask your wife to buy games? Absolutely. For sure. When I have a, what do you call it? Combined, well, even though he's talking to somebody else, but I will back up that person. Yeah. Same thing. If I had a roommate and we were both fighting for money to try to pay the rent, you can bet your ass I told the roommate, I'm thinking about going to the movies. Like, here's our combined money. Like, I find that only respectable. Like you got to tell the other person where some of your cash is going. Even if I have extra cash, I tell people.
Like,
yeah. And even if it's not, Johnny, you're still sharing the domicile. You're what if that person has a cool plan that they want to pull off? So by telling them, you get a little bit of data from them about, you know, what it's like. If you're, let's say, 3-4 months out of Christmas and you're like, hey, I want to spend $60. And they're like, oh, actually, I was thinking it'd be cool to go to a cabin in 2 or 3 weeks during winter. Yeah. It's like, okay, I'm glad I said something. So to me, it's all about just talking to people. I don't find any issues with that. I think, in fact, over a period of time, it would always be worse. It would always turn out to end up burning you over a period of time. And I want to talk about remastered games. Dude, did you see Horizon Zero Dawn's remaster?
No, actually. Let me look up some videos.
It's so good looking. Yeah, there's some technical issues I've definitely heard reports about. But from a pure... Now, again, I want to mention this because I'm going to be really positive, but we are going to talk about, you know, remaking games that aren't very old. But I will say this, Johnny, from what I've seen, this is better than a lot of remakes that aren't old, and they remake the game, and it doesn't look like much has changed.
The environments look,
dude,
pretty incredible, dude.
And ridiculous. And so
the lighting and everything.
It's funny because, yes, it is a game that even I was like, why? And then I saw the trees and the lighting and all that stuff, and I was like, damn, okay, if that's what we're talking about, there is some real adjustments in that game that are like stunningly beautiful, which was already a gorgeous game. But at the same time, 4 or 5 years later, doing a remake or remaster
is it
still
both
seems pretty
on
soon.
PS5 and PC?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, PS5 and PC. But I will say, damn good looking game. Damn good looking. And if you want to play it again, hey, nothing wrong with that. But Ultimate Game Club says it's truly a remaster, but 21:9 aspect ratio is not fully supported. Yeah, the amount of devs who don't want to support that because it's so low, and there's little technical issues with engines that make it a little bit harder, and HUD design, all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And there's this weird push-pull where fans have got it and want a push, but a lot of developers are like, dude, but like it's such a small amount, but at the same time, you know, it is your platform.
Is so strange to me because you end up having the HUD not on the ends of the screen, but like 3/4 of the screen, and then you have all this extra screen beyond the HUD. That's usually how they do it, because otherwise you would have to actually move your head to look at the HUD elements.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like you can't win. You know, you either have it like that where it's uncomfortable, or you have this weird, awkward.
Yeah. He's saying they advertise, but they advertise with all is 21,932. So you're saying they're advertising it and don't support it? Well, then you should go after them. I don't have it. I'm just looking at the videos, which
it just occurred to me
now that I think about it,
that these games are great without HUD, especially
they're better.
Let's say if you've already played the game, you're gonna play it a second time. Definitely check out the no HUD options, because that's a game changer.
It's so sweet, man. But that is the thing, right? You see these remakes and you're just sitting there going like, dude, it's only a couple years old. But then, well, for example, well, no, that's not a good example. But when you look at this one in particular, it's such an increase that it's really nice to be able to say, okay, well, that's possible. Now, of course, we're going to hold that against them. So everyone that doesn't do this, you know what's going to happen. We're all going to be like, hey, Horizon did it, but damn. It's sweet looking. It was already a beautiful game though. But it is
impressive, the lighting and everything, how it's come together.
Yeah, it's so fantastic looking. But again, $10 too. You know, it's only $10.
The upgrade path is awesome on that. Does it feel to you like, because I think one of the arguments against this type of remake after such little time since the release is like, well, I would rather they spend this money on like a new title or a different, maybe a new game or a sequel. But I think it's not totally fair, right, to say it's not either or, and it's maybe possible that, it's not in scope to do a new title, but they had scope to do this remake, and, it's something cool they can get out.
It's not in, well, scope stuff, even better. I did get to, work with tech teams, but like, the full tech team thing. Not only is it not in scope, but, and this isn't to socially like, call out some energy. The fact is in a world where we're laying so many people off, if it keeps some people busy working on a game until the next real game comes up that they can be shuttled to, I'm okay with that. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I don't like it. It doesn't excite me. But like, yes.
This is going to make some money.
And you're talking to somebody who did work at times, especially with QA, where you do QA and you'd help somebody with a game, especially if they were a smaller game company. And, we had somebody in my town who was making a game. You were helping them. You always knew that the moment they published, 40 to 50% of people were immediately laid off. That was the norm. It was it was like uptell, boom, laid off after. It was so normal. It was normalized, as the young kids say now. But I would rather have them stick around and do it. I don't like, I didn't need it, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend it's not fantastic looking, and it's a pleasant surprise. Like, it's definitely a pleasant surprise. SBZ says, say it with me, Bloodborne remake.
What is your theory? Like, why?
They've made it
so much business sense.
Would it? Because they must think, for whatever data they have, they must think it won't. Now that data changes for every day, but it could be not possible. But I think we've now seen that, like Night Dive Studios with their ability to like tear up a game as it runs,
or even what's the guys that did Demon Souls from the ground up, like
Blue Point.
Blue Point.
Yeah, and Sony's, they've stated it's up to Sony. Sony can do it whenever they want. Sony's not the, they're the ones who have the choice, and they haven't asked for it. So I don't know. My assumption is somebody's looking at it and saying whatever financial output we need to do is beyond what we think we will get back for that game right now. but every day we have, every day you have a new game, every day you have new data. You could pump it in, pump it in, pump it in, and suddenly it turns out to be viable. But I have no clue. The only clue I have is financial stuff that I've worked with, like that you've worked with. How many times you sat in a room, you say, we want some ideas for improvements. They give you 10, and you know that 5 are out of scope. They're out of financial anything, right? They're the pie in the sky ideas. 4 5 of them are pretty good. 2 of those you can't do because they're too expensive. 3 of them you may be able to. That's pretty much what happens. I'm assuming that's what's going on here, and that they're looking at it and saying, we just did, for whatever reason right now we can't.
If the remake is impossible or doesn't make sense, why do you think we haven't seen like Bloodborne 2? Because that also seems like a no-brainer. Like it would sell.
I feel like, because that would be back to From. I feel like Elden Ring ate up all their people at the time, or most of their people.
Yeah, that's fair.
And now we're out of that, obviously. But they also did other games. They wanted to change. They wanted to adjust. I mean, I feel like they have a love for Dark Souls and its world. And maybe there's a little left. I'm not saying that they don't love it, but maybe, perhaps, it doesn't light their fire like the idea of a Sekiro does, which is possible.
Yeah.
You and I will talk about fantasies, and we'll say, not fantasies, fantasy worlds, and we'll say something like, okay, Dark Ages doesn't appeal to me as much as Cyberpunk, which doesn't appeal to me as much as a Sekiro, like an Asian-inspired one. So it's possible internally, whatever type of fantasy Bloodborne is doesn't speak to them as much as we think it speaks to us. It's completely valid from the creator's standpoint.
When they did Bloodborne, I think it was called Project Beast, like the codename project before it came out or something.
Right.
And they did talk about it in terms of like experimentation, doing something different. And I think it may be right that wasn't really the type of game exactly that they ended up being excited about, because clearly they've gone back to the more Souls-like.
One Doom Reaper brought something up. From may want to be able to publish something they can put everywhere on every system. Exclusives are getting really difficult for that second/third party company that has to ask for a serious amount of money. I mean, when you even have Epic, who's, got throwaway money to the point of being, it's unbelievable. When even they're like, the deals we've made for some of the exclusivities haven't paid off. You're like, okay, if this company that's got not throwaway, but you know what I mean, like excess, then it must require extra scrutiny when it's a company that doesn't have so much excess. And From has a certain number of people. Maybe they don't want to, they may have, how it is. Sometimes somebody will say, hey, do you guys want to take on a project? And you're like, that'd be another 20 people. That means 2 more managers. If you have that kind of, maybe you have a lead, depending on how big your management group is, there's a lot there. I mean, I'd love it for the people who like that game. Like, just because it'd be nice to never hear it spoke about again. To be like, okay, it was good, or nope, it wasn't a good idea, and just be done with it, because you hear about it so much. But it feels like I hear about it from the same people a lot of times. Like, I don't quite know how much real popularity is there. I'm not saying it's not real. I'm just saying true buy, because as we hear from every company, what are they saying now all the time? YouTube channels don't equal sales. Views don't equal sales. TikTok doesn't equal sales. Twitter doesn't equal sales. And I think for a long time, companies were believing it was. Oh, there's excitement here. It must mean there's a desire to get it. And you see all these games coming out, some of them very good that don't sell, and yet they're a remake or they're a sequel. And you're like, why didn't that sell? It seems like everybody wanted it.
Yeah. We saw that with Alan Wake 2. It seemed like everybody was talking about it, but actually they didn't make that much money. So.
Did you see IGN's article on that?
No.
That was the weirdest backwards title. Let me read this. This was weird. So, and it just goes to show, I was saying how some people report slightly differently depending on the company, or like Yakuza gets away with this, but somebody else doesn't. So let me read the headline for this article and tell me if it doesn't feel like a little bit of patty cake versus like true. So normally you would say this game didn't make its money back, or hasn't. They stated, man, we did a lot of posts here. This is what it says. Remedy has recouped most of the development and marketing expense. That quite literally means they haven't made money. But for whatever reason, like, dude, that's what I'm saying. If that was another, I don't know what other company, but if that was like one of the other companies that we see get hammered on all the time, what would they say? They'd say, blah, 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 still hasn't made their money back.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was a weird title for that one. That just felt weird to me. What else do we got?
Yeah.
Let's see here. What are we at? Oh, we're at 2. We still got a little time.
2 hours. Right. I got something to run by you. It's about like RPGs in general.
Oh, shit.
So we had some good discussions in the Discord about what makes a good RPG. Some people were, for example, in Dragon Age, they were disappointed because they didn't have dialogue options, right? To be a jackass,
right,
at times. How do you feel? Do you think that's a central part of an RPG? The ability to be either like Paragon or
Renegade?
Or Renegade. That's clearly one lever, right? For like role playing.
Dude, if we said that, 99% of RPG games would not be considered RPG games ever again.
Okay.
That is ridiculous.
That's one way you could.
It's one lever that you can pull for an RPG.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
But you have other levers.
Yeah.
And maybe some levers are even what would you say, opposed to that. Like if you, for example, if you have a very well specified protagonist, well, then you won't be able to make that many choices in terms of what the protagonist is or what answers he or she gives, because it's a sort of predefined, strong character, right? Whereas if you don't have that strong protagonist, then you're much more open. But those are antithetical. So you either go kind of down one path or the other. And I feel like both can be good for a game. It's just...
I mean, can you imagine if we just pretended that you had to be able to be a bad guy to be an RPG? How many classic RPGs would absolutely instantly become not RPGs? But not only that, role-playing game, people get all fucked up with that. They think role-playing, depending on the person, may think that it is them playing the role and they can do anything. That's one type of role-playing game. But the other is that there's a role presented to you and you are going to experience that role, whatever it is predefined, and that can still be a role-playing game. Like, for whatever reason, once again, somebody wants to put a line in the sand and be like, I have to be able to be, let's say it's an anti-hero game, I have to be able to be good. Not if the role that they want to apply doesn't allow you to. I mean, you can still be role-playing in that. You can still do things and play the role of that character in that experience. You just won't have as much organic ability to change things and have a living world and all that kind of stuff. But dude, that'd be ridiculous. Like 90% of the games I like would just instantly not be RPGs. It would be...
Yeah.
Wouldn't make any sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are so many other RPG elements, like, leveling up a character.
Yeah.
Cool perk systems that, make you make choices as to what you want to be, what your play style is going to be.
Yeah.
A lot of those, I think, are also really, really big part of it.
I just love the idea of, like, we try to generalize and categorize, easily reference. We want to be able to put it in our little fucking 3x5 card index file in our brain and say, I know exactly what's going to be under RPG over here. And because I love chaos, that is exactly the opposite of what I want. I want them, all the games,
all different types.
I want the RPG card deck to be slid out and thrown on the floor so all the games are there. And then you can look at them like from a top down and say, this one's a little over here because there's a little less freedom. There's a little less, or there's a little more freedom on this game. But they're all RPGs. Yep. I would take them all out of the same bin and apply them. But for whatever reason, man, we get this... I don't know. That is weird, though, because I'm looking at all the games I liked, and they would all not be RPGs.
Yeah. I think the way I view it is like RPG is such an ample term.
Yeah.
Such an umbrella term that I view in my mind like lots of invisible knobs that creators can turn. Imagine from 0 to 10, like dialogue choice. Maybe, like Baldur's Gate 3 takes that to, to 11, right? Where you can have all types of responses. And then other games, that knob is turned down to 2, because guess what? They have these other knobs turned up that make more sense for what they want to create. And I think with Dragon Age, they had a very clear idea that Rook was going to be, a pretty like good character, like, benevolent character. And that fit with the story they're making. So to me, it made a lot of sense as I'm going through this pretty like cookie cutter fantasy story, right? In Dragon Age, it's like your kind of run of the mill wholesome fantasy so far. I think it makes sense. That's not to say that I do wish there were more choices for dialogue, because the options are sometimes pretty similar. Like, yes, no, yes, very much so, not totally sold, but they end on the same place.
Well, let me point out, are we talking about Dragon Age?
Yeah.
Dude, okay, we'll get in the weeds for just a second. But people are forgetting that Dragon Age's main antagonist is a character that you played with through Dragon Age
in a prior,
right?
Yeah.
So you have to have some kind of completely offset feel, like it has to be delivered to you in a very offset way, so you can look at that enemy and say, that is the bad guy. And I don't want to join up with that bad guy ever. I don't want to be aligned with that bad guy. Now, you could have done it the other way and said
that would be a different,
would give them freedom, but it would have been a different style of game. And yeah. They even named the game, what was it called? Dragon Age Wolf, I think. I think the original name for this was Dreadwolf. Yeah, Dreadwolf.
That's what they call him, I think.
Right. And what he did at the end of the last game was completely evil, but a lot of people won't have played the last game. So to what they're applying, the idea of saying, okay, we want this guy to be bad, and we have new and old characters. This is what we want to do. I'm certainly not making excuses, because I would love more options. I like nuance. I love Paragon Renegade.
All
I love
things equal,
Gray.
if we just have more options, great. Right?
But I do understand I absolutely understand that they have a different weight than another game that had no IP prior. And that the bad guy isn't quite literally the guy that like screwed up everything at the end of the prior game. There is definitely, and we saw Mass Effect was able to do it, but Mass Effect, admittedly, at least to me, Mass Effect started jumping the shark a lot once you got to the third game, because it started introducing all these other bad guys, because especially with DLCs or what have you, there were times where they were trying to sort of make you care. And I've told you this before. I love it when the bad guy's just a bad guy. The Reapers became almost not comical, certainly not comical, but a little bit more. I understood them a little bit more by the end, and there's a fine line between understanding more and actual empathy. And I don't like empathy for particularly bad things. And so to me, I was like, there's no empathy whatsoever for the Reapers, even though if you play the game, there's definitely some stuff there. Leviathan DLC, I think, maybe not that one, but there's some other stuff there that makes you go like, or, where they try to explain it to you. Like, the reason why we're doing this is, I'm, not going to break into the Reaper voice, but the reason why we're doing this is, reset the universe, blah, blah, blah. And you're just like, dude, you're just bad guys. You're fucking bad guys. You're bad guys. And I'm not going to sit here and talk to the ant hive in my backyard that's biting everybody. I'm just going to burn the thing down. And that's okay too. I would like more games to do that. But this one, I'd love more choice. Yeah. I think more choice would be great, but I do also understand the weight that they're under, where they chose it, by the way. They chose they're sitting in what they chose, which is that we're going to have this guy be the bad guy,
Yeah. And they try to make you feel like your choices matter in some small ways. For example, like they made me choose which ally to take into a dangerous situation, and she came out injured out of that. So like in follow-up sequences, she's injured and there's a different dialogue based on that. So those are cool. And they do try to always point out, like on the left side, like, hey, this person reacted this way because you did X, this type of thing, where they're showcasing the impact you've had. I think it's maybe a bit in your face. I would love for that to be
I was just going to say, I'm going to
bit.
allow you to say that. Okay, great. All right.
It is a bit much, because it's like, I think they're really going out of their way to demonstrate that you've had an impact. But in reality, a lot of those seem like pretty shallow,
And dude, it could be because they saw the writing was fairly linear, and they said, we got to make sure people understand they do have an impact, so we're going to pop up an impact indicator.
Give some impact.
A lot of their games have done it already. Inquisition did it. But I will say, I wasn't a super big fan of Inquisition's writing either. I wasn't a fan of Dragon Age 2's writing either. Dragon Age Origins, I liked its writing, but I think people blow Dragon Age Origins up to be something that's such a falsehood of like fantastic memories.
Like,
and when I went back and played Dragon Age Origins is great because you start out, you have a different thing for a little while, then you get into what is a fairly typical D&D RPG game. It's fairly typical. Writing is pretty good, and it's harder hitting, I think, but it's not, dude, the number of people who I don't know, in their brain, they think everything is different for 6 runs or whatever, the amount of origins there are. And you're like, dude, or I've heard the same thing happen with Cyberpunk. Oh, my gameplay was completely different. They're completely different, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, some of your skills have different choices, but let's just be honest. The starting of Cyberpunk is like 35 minutes, and then you're basically on the same track as everybody else.
Same track.
Yeah.
You have
it's
some extra
okay to say that.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird. It's weird. With Veilguard, though, I'm going to have to play it more to give a more solid opinion of it. But to me personally, I feel like I'm probably going to come out of this thinking it's mediocre and not like really one way or the other. Maybe writing lower from what I've seen. If it continues, I'll probably be like,
It's funny because it sounds like the gameplay might hold you.
Yes.
Whereas the story, not so much.
Yeah, the story is the writing and the story, and I haven't got to the stuff that I've heard people bitching about in our Discord or even in chat. I haven't got to a lot of that kind of stuff. So once I do, like I said, I don't give a fuck. Like, I'll respond whatever way I want to respond. People can be mad or not. If I like it, I'm going to say I like it. If I dislike it, I'm going to say I dislike it. But when you look at it from what I have seen and heard, if it's combined with the tightness of the narrative, I understand the dismay people may have, where they're like, dude, I feel like I'm just being taught through this entire game. Like, I'm just being like, things are just thrown at me and I can't even get out of it. I can't even sidestep and be like, dude, I'm not a part of this. What are you doing? Like, why am I in this discussion? And it feels like that's the way the game is doing. But the gameplay, from what I've seen and what I've played, could hold me. Yeah, we'll have to see. It's going to be a weird one. But I would say it feels to me like it'll probably just be a mediocre RPG. I'll probably like Inquisition. I can't even say better. Well, we'll just have to see. Inquisition was long by the time, man. Hinterlands, like, Has the Matt says, with having 3 kids, career, and wife, it's hard to justify playing a mediocre game. I have to be very picky. Yeah. I mean, with 0 kids, 0 career, and 0 wife, people can be picky. I don't think there's anything to indicate if you have more or have less. People can be picky or they cannot be picky. I know people who have a bunch of kids and have a career and have a wife, and they play the shittiest games because they don't want any buy-in, and they're purposely playing shit games. So it really doesn't matter what your home setup is. It's just about you. And the other thing is I mean, unless we're all just a fucking echo chamber in here, which I would hate, I got to have liked a game somebody hasn't liked. So it's like, just respond that way and be like, oh, okay, people like this game, I don't, move on. It's not that goddamn, it's not cancer.
That's the other thing. It may not be mediocre to you, Hazmat. You might try it, and like me, it puts a big smile in your face. And, I'm really enjoying the standard fantasy, but with absolutely beautiful environments and fun gameplay. I think for some people, this is a really fun, solid thing.
I can only speak for who I've talked to in here, and even people here who are, that more people have liked it than I expected. That's all I can say. Like I can't even give my own opinion in that way, but I have definitely noticed way more people, even people who were like, I didn't think I'd like it, but I got it anyway, or I didn't see a review and now I'm worried, or people who watched and were like, I'm okay with this and I'm still going to play it. I'm quite surprised, especially some of the people that I've seen in our chat who I sort of know what they may or may not like and have ended up liking it a lot better. But again, 4 hours in ain't 40. It's
that's going to be the big difference.
Motherfuckers need to come back to me after they played Valhalla for 40
You're like
to
the
60
veteran,
hours.
like,
It is way different playing a game all the way through. I've been through wars. I've got like the black and white footage of the Nom chopper behind me in some games.
Right.
And the number of people who come at you who are like, you are wrong. And you can be wrong. I've been wrong for sure. But on some of these titles, even the discussion about it isn't really fully fleshed out because a person has 2 hours in the character creator and have went through the first thing and they're like, it's fine. You're like,
you know what's funny?
Come back to me in a little while.
It seems like this game, they fine-tuned the dialogue options to the band of good, evil that I exist in, which is in the top.
That could be absolutely true. Yeah.
I'm like, you know, if you think about good here at the top, bad at the bottom, I operate in the top, like, fourth of that.
Right.
That's where I'm comfortable. So the answers I'm given to choose from are
the answers so you would choose
they
and
are
want
gradations
anyway.
Of good.
Yeah.
That those are the ones that I would give. So sometimes I'm a little bit more pissed and I'll go like, you know, like, but it's funny because I don't really have the Renegade thing that much. I did try it in Baldur's Gate. But yeah, ultimately, dude, it was hilarious in Mass Effect. I tried to do a full Renegade
Didn't
run.
work?
No, because I would, for so many answers where I'm insulting someone, I would just stop there and I would be like, I know I have to choose this because I'm doing a Renegade run, but I can't bring myself to insult this person. They don't deserve it. You know, they weren't nasty to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I like games like Tyranny, which is where you're fully the bad guy. Tyranny is Tyranny is like Pillars of Eternity, but
there are also
you're the bad
gradations,
guy.
Right? You can kind of
there are, but you're the bad guy. There's no hedging around. You're the bad guy. You just are, and I love that. And I love games like Manhunt. You're the bad guy. They can have that. Not every game needs to be it. And if Manhunt, the meta of playing Manhunt and trying not to kill everybody, that could be enjoyable, but it doesn't need to be in the scope of the game. With this game, I think as an RPG in Dragon Age, people probably go into it with a certain expectation of choices. If those choices aren't met, then they wonder why. And if they're being intelligent, they see, and I'm not talking down, I'm actually saying if they're being intelligent and seeing that some of these choices don't really have a reason to just be these choices, then they're being frustrated or disappointed by it is super high. Being angry by it, that's weird. Luckily, I don't see a lot of people being angry about the choices as much as they're angry about the other stuff that then becomes a true social discussion as well. And I'll have those because like that doesn't like I definitely see times where I'm like, why is this game trying to talk to me in this way as if I'm a bad person? Like, and sometimes that can turn out to be great. Sometimes you play a game, you'd be like, oh, wow, okay, that was the role they chose for me. What I'm feeling or hearing from not Inquisition, but Veilguard, is that it does that with no indication whatsoever of why. So there's nothing that there is nothing that repairs the gap between you being told and treated and certain data coming to you and any kind of reason, ultimate reason why. It feels just there. That is completely okay to be bothersome because it's the same shit we see in movies where there's a 2-minute part where you're like, that could be edited out because it doesn't fit. And you look at a game like this and you're like, okay, that doesn't fit, man. Like it's okay to say it. It's like, it doesn't fit. Whatever your reason may be, then other people will like it for the very same reason. You and I've talked about this. I think you, in fact, disagree with me on this. But I'm pretty sure you're the person who likes the Lord of the Rings expanded fucking boring ass versions, right? Yeah, I'm just joking. But those things, I will die if I ever had to watch those. I would die. I get nervous with the idea whenever anybody says, let's watch Lord of the Rings.
Extended Sam scenes.
Dude. Fucking.
Oh my God.
but enjoying it and sitting there nitpicking it. That's why when you and I are talking in a podcast is different than the review, because in the review I have to give like here's the total thoughts, here's my reaction, blah blah blah, and you're not going to spend, unless you want to do a fucking 50 minute review, you're not going to sit there spinning some kind of yarn about why everything's done, because I don't even know.
Exploring every
and you don't know.
of the universe.
Like at some point you start sounding like you think you know, and we've talked about this before. We'll have technical people say, I don't know why this company didn't just change their engine to this. And it's like, come on, man. Come on. That is such a weird thing to say. Like, that is so fucking odd. Great pod, Jay Reaper says. Jay, we were just talking about you and we didn't say anything bad. Well, not just, but a little bit ago. 4 hours of Lord of the Rings are peak entertainment, SBZ says. That is correct. 3 movies, approximately 4 hours total. I would agree. But not
the short, small bladder version.
The small bladder version is perfect. The short, minuscule baby bladder version of Lord of the Rings, especially the third one, which is...
Dude, it's colossal.
Incomprehensible in how it is colossal. How long? How truly long is it?
It's 4 hours. I think it's actually a little above 4 hours.
No shit, really?
Yeah, I think so.
Dude, that's a long movie. But, if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings and you're a fan of whatever game, right? It makes sense. Is that your cat or a person?
It is. Sorry, he went crazy. He's, I don't know. He found something on the floor.
I think I'm one of the few that feels the same thing about Alan Wake, too.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I felt Alan Wake 2. I liked it a lot. I felt that game absolutely overstayed its welcome in multiple places. Multiple places. And I did get shouted down. I even got mentioned in a couple where people were saying oh, I can't believe Carrick said this, blah, blah, blah. He's a huge Alan Wake 1 fan. And I do have to point out, they were correct. I'm a huge Alan Wake 1 fan. We are reviewing fucking Alan Wake 2. That doesn't make any sense. Yes, I was an Alan Wake 1 fan. Alan Wake 2, I'm a fan of, but it's got some issues and I'll bring them up. It's a really weird, stupid thing to say when you start to categorize that kind of stuff. But Alan Wake 2, Inquisition, Valhalla, Witcher 3.
They could have told
I felt Witcher 3 overstayed its welcome.
Right? Mm-hmm. Alan Wake, for what the story was, they could have told that in a tighter loop.
Yeah, there were things in that felt a little bit like, I wonder if this is going to come back financially to be a discussion part of when we continue to talk about them not making their money back, and you look at all this extra stuff and you're like,
it's a little fat on the, little too much fat on the steak.
Vapor says, Cyberpunk didn't let you be really evil either. I would say Cyberpunk let you be evil in the open world elements where you could kill a bunch of people and get away with it, even if the cops came after you. And there's not much of that in Veilguard because it's not an open world at all. That's the other thing about Veilguard. I think that people, when you start seeing how it's set up, it is not at all open world. So
correct.
The ability to stretch out your evilness and slaughter is distinctly curbed compared to a Cyberpunk. But because I killed a lot of people in Cyberpunk and I was a good guy. But
Oh, dude. Massive murderer.
I mean, I would go into a place and there'd be bad guys and I'd be like collateral damage. And
some were good too, maybe.
I
didn't stop to ask, hey.
There were I was the good guy in the choices. There were times where there was a battle.
I kill you, what's your political?
There was a battle in an alley and I was running across the street and I just literally mowed every single person down so that I could hit the bad guy. And I was the good guy. So I saw him and I started running and there were just too many of them. And I was like, "Wah!" I was like, I need to get to these dudes. I didn't want to bump into them because it was a pretty big group. Hey, so yeah, I just killed them on it. And I played that first time. One of the 2 times, as completely a good, in choices, a good guy. But
your actions.
Yeah, I definitely destroyed them. Thank God it is an open world, Stalin says. So what else do you guys want us to talk about? Why we jump into the endings or jump into the end part of this podcast?
I don't know if you want to talk about it now. I did want to bring up Alan Wake 2, the DLC itself, because we haven't talked much about it. It hasn't got much press at all. I haven't seen any reviews necessarily for it. But Lake House, new DLC for Alan Wake 2. You go in, you access it from the menu. It's totally separate, which I love. You go in, it's its own thing. Similar to how what was the other thing? Not Spring Rolls, Spring Nights. Yeah,
Night
the other
Springs?
DLC. Night Springs, there you go. I was in the ballpark. So yeah, so this one is one of the buildings that you see in the base game. That's a big FBI building. You now can enter as a different agent, so different actress. She does a good job in this.
She does great.
Yeah, has like a different personality and stuff. And you go in there, you're exploring this building, you're going up and down, unlocking stuff, and you're kind of like getting stuff and going back to floors you've already explored, and reality is bending around that.
Continue while I'm letting my dogs out. I'm listening.
Okay. So the sort of theme about it, guys, is that the deeper you go in the building, the more bizarre things get. And so you keep going down and down, and yeah. And then it's kind of layered in that way. And eventually you get to the bottom of it, literally, which is pretty cool. It's a short experience. I think I completed it in, I don't know exactly, 3-4 hours. Pretty short and sweet, but it's got some cool gameplay differences to the base game. Some like new enemies that are like painting based, so they can like go into paintings and move inside the paint and stuff, which is pretty cool. Some of the effects, and they're pretty scary. It's a little bit of a spooky DLC compared to the base game. I had some good like jump scares in it that were pretty well done. And there's a lot of documents you can read with little things pointing back to both like Alan Wake and some of the AWEs that happened there, and some of the cool things that they are doing in the building itself in terms of research and trying to reproduce Alan Wake's ability to manufacture reality. And so, yeah, it's a cool little plot in there, very well contained, very short and sharp.
Dude,
pretty good.
This is why it bothers me, because I didn't like Saga too much in Alan Wake 2. I felt that the splitting didn't make it makes sense because you have to tell the story of Alan Wake 2. You could have rewrote the story and just had him escape, whatever, or try to escape. But whatever, she was in there. I didn't really like that character as much as I thought I was going to. I ended up liking the one, what's her name? I can't remember her name, but the one that's in this from Star Wars Battlefront 2. I told you, she was, I think, Aldi's girlfriend for a season in Arrow. She's a good actress. And she unfortunately got into Star Wars Battlefront 2, which was an MTX disaster. Another game I rated for EA as a never touch. So maybe that's why I didn't get Dragon Age. Who knows? But I felt that she did a better job, or she was written better. We'll just say it that way. I like that character more. I think when you look at their expansions or what have you, I think that they've pretty much nailed it, because the game has an open-endedness to every expansion they want to deliver. Alan Wake's entire fiction is open for expansions. There isn't a world that you know is this big and the expansion needs to be an island somewhere or another continent. Alan Wake is like, the expansion can be internal, almost like, you know, the discussion that continually happens. Are we going to jump in ships and we going to fly to Mars? Or are we going to, you know, go into the digital realm and become AI? And that's all we are, is just, you know, microchips on a giant server bed. No one knows. But I thought it was, I mean, I think overall their choice of DLC has always been good. I think Alan Wake's DLCs, even the one that was not rated great, American Nightmare, I guess that's a standalone slash DLC. But I like that for what it was as well. I think they do a really good job, and I think it just fits the world to do DLC. It allows them to branch out to other worlds. It allows them to take people like they did from Quantum Break, which, even though Quantum Break is Microsoft's IP, you know, you still see a bunch of little hints about Quantum Break in the game, which I love. And, you know, Microsoft's probably got to sign off on that. I don't see why they wouldn't. The idea is sound. I love that they put all that in the game. They do a really good job, man. That, like, their DLC is also, I think, probably the greatest one of the greatest examples of how long it needs to be. They're not, overall, I've never felt that they went too long. And too short usually just indicates I wanted it to be longer. So that means I enjoyed it. Like if I say a DLC is too short, unless it's a money thing, it's usually, damn, I was really enjoying this. I wish it had extended a little ways. So yeah, that's cool, man. Is this the last DLC they are doing for Alan Wake? Kenshiro asks.
I haven't seen confirmation of that, but it looks like it. So you go into the game and you have the 2 tabs there for the 2 DLCs.
Yeah. So we have some amazing questions that I almost missed that are in our Discord. This one is awesome. It's going to take a little bit of thinking. But this is from Master Paz. He says, are there any crazy takes or infamous game-related statements that jump to your mind, like Lost Ark, finally an MMO that respects your time? So, dude, game takes or things that we hear that, like, you're just like, dude, what? Well, I mentioned the one from IGN. I would say anytime I hear, like, there's something wrong with, or, you know, whatever, those kind of, you know, YouTube drama kind of shit, where it's like, that it doesn't even matter if it's games. It's just that kind of stuff infuriates me. But crazy takes are infamous game-related statements. Lost Ark, finally an MMO that respects your time. I mean, wasn't it? It was Romero who said he's going to make you his bitch for Daikatana. That didn't work out for him. That did not work out. Let's see. What other ones? WoW Killer.
Crazy takes.
WoW Killer. The number of times I've heard somebody say an MMO was a WoW killer is completely... I swear to God, it's more than there's ever been MMOs. This game is a WoW killer. Luckily, most companies don't say it anymore. But whenever I saw that, I was like, at some point, don't even try to be a WoW killer. Be like, we want to be a 10th as good as WoW. I would actually consider that to be an amazing byline. If somebody's like, hey, we've got a new MMO. It's a fantasy MMO. And we want to be about a 10th as long as WoW and pretty good. And I'd be like, dude, that's the MMO I'm checking out. Because when anybody says they're a WoW killer, dude, come. I mean, it's not even an MMO. It's WoW. Like, just remove it from the discussion. What are you saying? Sorry.
They were saying it about Final Fantasy 14 I think this was back when WoW got hit by some of the big PR, problems from Blizzard and stuff. And 14 was having a super big surge. People were saying,
and they were trying to say it was a WoW killer.
Yeah.
Dude, come on, man. Jesus Crust says, the game really makes you feel like a blank. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I definitely heard that a lot. Augusto says, don't get me wrong, I love Astrobot, but perfect game. That's absurd. Oh, you mean when you hear that some game is perfect? I think that's what you're saying?
When people called it a perfect game?
Have you ever... I'm taking off my reviewer hat for a second. Have you ever played a perfect game?
I think so. I think in isolation, a game can be perfect in what it's trying to do. I think Red Dead 2 was pretty much perfect in what it was trying to do with its limitations.
Okay,
so it really depends. Fair. Like, for example,
that's really fair.
Some of the shooting had limitations. Some of the stuff you could do in missions was very limited. Like we talk about, you can't go out of the zone you're meant to operate in. Those are technically limitations, and you could say, therefore, it's not a perfect game. The way that I view it is, like we talked about the knobs, those are simply knobs that weren't prioritized because they weren't part of the, the big vision, or they were compromises that were decided upon. And I think it makes sense to think of a game as a perfect game for you if it did, exactly sort of what it's trying to do very effectively. I think in some ways Mass Effect 1 was a perfect game for me. Does it mean that I would love that exact gameplay right now? No, we've iterated beyond that point now. But for that point in time, it felt like a perfect game when I played it.
I think that you slightly adjusted my answer because I was gonna say no. I probably still feel like no. It's hard to remember a game, and then you go back to it.
Because you can always find stuff that.
Well, I'm trying. Yeah, but I said
right?
take the review hat off, and I think you already have it off. So I think it's fair that if you feel that Red Dead 2 was a right too.
Yeah.
So weirdly enough, for its time, I actually felt like Red Dead 1 was. So when I said that was fair. When I was looking back at Red Dead 1, I was like, oh, interesting, because I might actually say for what they were trying to do in Red Dead 1 and how they delivered it, story arc, gameplay, just everything overall, that might have felt like pretty much a perfect game, especially because even though I had some tech issues with it, when it first came out, we're talking, the old consoles, it was pretty high. I think at some point then you start looking all the way back to like a Tetris or something, where you get a game that doesn't attempt to do almost anything other than that basic little byline, or that even byline, but basic little definition that's so tight that they can say, here it is, we're done, and it just sort of works. It's definitely, perfect, dude, that's such a bad perfect game.
Because even let's take one of your favorite games. I don't know.
Can I just point out one more thing? Just one thing. Astrobot, I died twice in the entire game.
Yeah.
So the idea that it is a perfect game definitely would make it skew towards a person who really liked no difficulty or barely any. And that's a different thing than me. Go ahead. What were you saying? Sorry.
No. I think that's one thing. If you want some challenge in a game, that would already be a ding.
Yeah. But what were you saying? Sorry, I talked over you.
I was thinking, I was trying to think about like one of your favorite games of all time. Like, is Bully one of them?
Yeah, one of my favorite games. Oh yeah,
just to think of an example.
Absolutely,
not
like
without
a doubt.
Top favorite, but one like really huge game, right? That you love. What would you say? Does that qualify as perfect?
Not even close. No. Bully had issues with the bicycle when you go out and about. Control scheme was weird. It was really Resident Evil-y at times, where it felt like movement was difficult in it. I lost a bunch of fights because I had issues with those fights occurring.
Wasn't responsive.
Yeah, that's why it bothers me, because it feels like to say it's a perfect game when you could simply say it is one of my favorite games ever, or this is my favorite game I've ever played so far. Yeah. That's completely 100%
it kind of has the connotation that it couldn't be better, or that it's technically perfect as well. That's another thing where you can always find technical flaws, pretty much, even the most.
And that's why scores that are numbered bothered me, because if somebody doesn't use 10 a lot, like you get an IGN or whatever, and they give some 10s out, and people are like, oh my God. But they also have, unfortunately, a wording connotation of perfect with 10. Those mean distinctly different things, man. Distinctly different. And so when you get this situation where you start noticing that, let's say, nobody wants to go below a 4 in a 1 to 10 scale, to me, that indicates you have a problem with the scale.
Yeah.
Like the scale is screwed up in how it's working, because it can't represent, if it's not representing 1, 2, 3 at all ever.
Yeah. Because we were talking about the range of goodness, but if you take the same idea
of the range
like
of badness,
0 to 10,
right?
Your operating range for some outlets, it's like between 5 and 9, maybe.
Yeah. And what's weird is, if you were to do it that way, 5 to 9, 4 numbers, buy, wait for a sale, wait for a deep sale, don't touch.
That's already,
it's already built in.
It.
And yet at the same time, the reason why I don't do numbers is because if I tell somebody a game is a 5, depending on where they go, a 5 could be 1 to 5, could be good. Game could be 1 to 5. A person maybe does it like a first place, and 5 is low. It's rarely done, but it's possible. Some places do 1 to 4 stars, some place 1 to 10. So a 4 means something different. When I say buy, I've even had people say, well, what if the price changes? I'm like, what if? If I said it was a buy at 60, would it not be a buy at 20? Like, what the? It doesn't make any sense. It's like that number, that wording,
and it's not like
across the board.
It's not like you have a an extra tier on top of buy that's like,
right,
fuck yes, buy, like, you know, masterpiece buy versus
and
normal buy.
and it's like, especially when you're speaking to a consumer who, unless they're a, you know, oil baron, fucking, or they're the monopoly man, everybody knows what $60 is. It doesn't even matter if their $60 is 10 to them because they're rich. They still know what $60 is. So talking about the price is vital for consumers. If we're talking about art, if we're talking about me walking somehow to an art show and they have a game on the wall and I play the game on the wall and there's no price, it's simply go to it or not go to it, that might be different. But when you're talking to a consumer, price is all that matters to me. Fuck. And I've had people say, I can't believe you bring price into it. I'm like, well, I can't believe you take free games. Do we want to just dive into fucking mudslinging? Like, because you're the one taking games and going on trips. I'm not. So I don't care what anybody says, because at that point, I'm already like, hey, at least I'm spending my cash. You guys aren't even meeting a consumer halfway. And that happens with a lot of things. We see it with movies where people go to movies early and they'll say if it's good or bad. And it's like, I get it. But a person has to pay $14 if they go to the movie at this time. They have, you know, whatever it may be, depending on where they're getting the movie ticket. The fact is money matters to everybody for the most part. Money is one of the few things that sort of joins us all together, is understanding what it is. Even if somebody's frivolous with it, they still. Do you know how you know you were frivolous with fucking money? Because you spent a bunch of money and you knew how much it was worth. Like, that's how you're frivolous with it. Like, it doesn't make any sense that people try to remove it from the discussion. It's like, it is what it is. It's there. Yeah, it's a weird one.
I think
it's a weird one.
Money or time are the two, like, universal.
Yeah.
Because you could also, like, you know, it would make sense. I think this is kind of how I thought about reviewing initially games, is that I would say, is it worth spending your time versus like spending your money? Because originally, to me, that made more sense in case, you know, $60 means something different to me than it might to, you know,
but
Jeff
I think
Bezos.
$60 is transferable. Time is not. And when you,
that is also true.
$60 is a number translated to your effort. It's pretty easy for a human to identify that. When I say time, what did we just have? We had somebody in here who said, listen, I have a bunch of kids. I've got a job. I can only play blah, blah, blah. That doesn't really come, you never really heard money. Well, I think he might have said money as well, so that's fair. But there is a time where when we start saying time, then you have to really dive in and go, okay, now there's another thing I need to look at and identify and translate to. It doesn't matter. You're never going to be perfect.
You could have the same problem with either, because maybe for one person, money doesn't matter because they're so rich. But like,
if money doesn't matter, then they still know that it doesn't matter, which means they know how much it's worth.
It's still a reference point.
It is still a reference point. Yeah. And so that's what bothers me, is like, if it's still a reference point, by you ignoring it, I can ignore $60 means you know exactly what fucking $60 is worth. So it's like, there it is. You can figure it out.
Yeah.
Time works. And you could certainly do it if you put the context in the review. But I do think that time becomes an issue when you start talking about, is your time worth spent? I think that's better as a contextual part in a review than it is as a score, because you could say the first 10 hours are not great in Death Stranding. Yeah.
Because it may not explain the whole thing. Because I would say, hey, it's worth spending your time. But what if you have so little time because you have a big family that actually, no, it doesn't make sense? Because if you play a game like Metaphor, you would need so many weeks to actually finish it that, no, it doesn't make sense, you know, for you to spend your time. But anyway, yeah, it gets pretty dicey.
Wild One says, ACG, I don't want to derail a conversation, so feel free to answer after this. You used to have segments where you discuss software, hardware, and other stuff. We still do. We just haven't right now, but we still do. It's so hard to find, and I miss those. Yeah, we just don't do them very much. But I mean, if something pops up, I think the last one we did was last month.
The only thing that popped up was the new Intel processors, the Ultra. I think it's 265.
I think he's talking more along the lines of like software I or Reg or you have used, and we want to push. Yeah. I will admit also, I will track something for a while before I will tell somebody to use it, because the moment I mention something, people will be like, that corrupted my seed. We're like, oh, sorry. But yeah, it's a good point. And I'll definitely, I appreciate you bringing it up. I'll try to put it on a list to, if we have any, to discuss. But I think that's pretty difficult to do. We don't always have choices, we don't always have software that we want to talk about, or hardware. Do we have any hardware? Do you have any new hardware? Johnny did something, guys. He moved everything to one PC, man.
Yeah, it's been fantastic.
One
just
PC.
Simplified a lot of my workflow. Yeah, I think really the main software was the fan control that
CPU
we talked about
or fan
already.
control. Yeah, that thing is
because
awesome.
the ability to dial in each of your fans super easily from Windows itself without having to go into BIOS and stuff has been incredible. Like the noise level of my machine, you know, if I'm not using it, for example, it's like stealth, you know, and then it does go up if I need it, but it doesn't go 100%. It's able to like.
Yeah, dude, I remember us talking about it, and you know, you had your reasons that were very like viable, but you know, I luckily have been I have a second one that I've messed around with, but could never get it dialed in as well as you did. You had yours pretty dialed in. But then once you moved, I think it's really easy. Once you move to one, you're like, oh, okay. I see why like two screens on one might be, especially when you have all these goddamn CPU cores and threads that you're not using for half the stuff. So you're like, I might as well just have one PC. Like some of these are so overpowered. Even when you're playing a game, you look at the game and it's using what? 4 cores? And you're like, dude.
Yeah, and with how efficient the encoding is, the video encoding is nowadays with your GPU, you know, there's so much headroom in the GPU to play a game and encode, and it does a great job, like pretty much equal to CPUs nowadays. So
yeah, dude, we've done times where we've streamed to 3 places, separate encoder, and recorded super high bit rate, and it's like 4% CPU use, and the GPU is like 10% because it's nothing compared to what it was. In fact, your hard drive speed and your write speed across your drives is going to matter way more now than anything else. The other thing was Thiz Viper says, has anyone tried Delta Force? So I know Johnny hasn't. I tried it a little bit. I like the idea of Delta Force, but it's a little early. But good shooter, you know, good baseline for a shooter. I can't wait to see it, but haven't yet. A1 Nagel says, how would you feel if Xbox consoles went away and Microsoft doubled down on service, studios, and games? I like 3 competitors, honestly.
Yeah.
I lived through the 2 competitor time, and I wasn't incredibly happy during that time. Johnny, I don't know about you. I do also feel, though, that so much shit's changed with the handhelds and with like little portable PCs and all this stuff. So it's like maybe at this point, like who knows what matters and what's going on what. And if you have a PC that you can stream, you know, it's not the same as a console, but you get my drift. Yeah. I don't know. It's a weird thought process. I mean, I think it's possible. Obviously, Microsoft has stated it's for sure not happening now. They're going full bore on another console or something to that effect.
Do you think that the more competitors, the better? Like if we lived in a universe where we have what we have now, plus, you know, Pony and Sony as 2 other competitors, and we now have like 4 or 5 big console makers.
Mustache is itching my nose. I feel like I lived through 2 competitors, and whether it be the companies, the choice, the ecosystems, I wasn't incredibly happy with. So I do feel that we are better with an uneven number of competitors. Yeah, I always have. That triangle of competitiveness keeps the other 2 adjusting, and they can't just motor set on the other. Oh, you're doing a shooter? We're doing a shooter. Oh, you're doing this? We're doing this. Instead, there's this jostling, and
you're
there's
always
more
chasing.
Yeah, or chasing or trying to offer uniqueness for your item. I lived through Sony telling us to get another job, and I don't ever want to live through that again. Well, the Pro is pretty close,
well,
but you get my drift. Yeah. Like I've lived through that, and that's when somebody doesn't feel like they have a competitor. It's why I'm happy with, you know, you've got ARM, you've got Intel, You've like all that kind of stuff where you have these other competitors in the PC market. I love that. I love that there's different competitors in the handheld market. I love that. So yeah, I would say same thing with VR helmets. People have asked about, oh, you know, PSVR helmet's really good. What if everybody just had a PSVR 2, but for their PC, or a Meta? Would we really want either one of those companies being the only VR? No. What I would like is an underlying engine that runs on all of them, but I don't want them in control of everything. That would suck balls. Yeah. God damn, my mustache is itching my nose. And then you had Alan Wake, DA Veilguard. You had Call of Duty 6 campaign. Let me look at Reddit and see what we've missed, because every time we get in here, we get out on a Friday, and there's some new data that we've missed. So here we go. Let's go. Rockstar plans to bring much requested PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S features of GTA Online to the PC platform. Yeah, that was interesting, because I think it's Solar who does a lot of that game, a lot of online on the console, and was saying that, weirdly enough, the console has some forward-thinking stuff that is not in the PC version. So, which is rare, right? I think that's normal.
Yeah, there have been a few examples, like, for example, Diablo 3 had a roll, so you could roll in game on the console version, and you could not on PC. So think about that.
Yeah.
That's a big difference, you know.
That is a big difference. Yeah. That's actually pretty massive. And then also Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl PC specs revealed.
Ooh.
So,
okay.
Here we go. Minimum PC specs are Windows 10 or 11, a processor AMD 1600X or Core i5 7600K, memory 6 gigabytes of RAM, and graphics would be an RX 580 or a GTX 1060. Recommended, which, by the way, can we just all agree minimum is beyond minimum and recommended is minimum? Can we just fucking do that now? Because this shit pisses me off. So
anyone with the actual minimum there is gonna have like a shit experience.
Yeah. It means boot to fucking title. So recommended PC specs, which is for 99% of the time your minimum. That's the way it is. Windows 10 or 11, a Ryzen 7 3700X or an i7 9700K. Man, that's my old PC. Memory, 16 gigabytes of RAM, graphics, RX 5700 8 gig or GeForce 27 Super, but they also put a slash and say or GTX 1080 Ti 11 gig. That's interesting. 1080 Ti though, yeah, super powerful. So that makes sense, because there's some overlap between those two. Storage is 150 gigabytes is what they hope you'll have. So there you go. They say for console players, Stalker 2 will run at 30 FPS for the Xbox Series S. Also confirmed the game will run at 60 on the Xbox Series X. So you got 60 on the X, 30 on the S. Your recommended is really your minimum, and it looks like they're aiming for at least, if not more, than 8 to 10 gigabytes on your video card. But I think, honestly, if you can get 12 or above, you'd be in even better shape. From what I've seen graphically, that looks about right.
Yeah. A 1080 Ti, it's crazy to think how long that card has been effective.
1080 Ti is a beast.
I remember when I met you.
Yeah.
And we did the first podcast. That's like around the time I got a 1080 Ti, or like, maybe a year after.
Mm-hmm.
And still, so it's many years now.
Dude, it's crazy. 1080 Ti it's just a monster.
It can still run a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's nuts to me that for the most part, other than DLSS, and you have your not fake, but your other versions that you can get, lossless scale or something like that. But it is crazy to me that that's pretty much the only thing. The rest you can run on the old system. And I don't know what it would look like on a 1080 Ti. Probably, pretty rough resolution wise. We'll just have to
probably
see. Yeah,
decent. Yeah.
Yeah. There's some games I play though that I am surprised that really, other than DLSS, that's the only thing holding it back. Sorry, is what I mean to say. And that you get a 1080 Ti and you're like, damn, this thing was a beast back then. Like, it was a good card. It was just one of those cards that seems to be like that sweet spot that you're like, all right, dude, If you can hit a 1080 Ti, you can make a game look good, but maybe not the bells and whistles, but still look good. Vincent says 1080 Ti with FSR and Cyberpunk is great. I agree. Yeah. I think Cyberpunk also has really good, character graphics design. He gets away where you don't need a ton of resolution in that game. It's great if you have it, but I mean, you can play that game. I played it on pretty low resolution on the handhelds. Smaller screen, then blown it up by plugging it into the TV and still been pretty happy. I mean, you notice it, but come on, it's not going to kill me. It's not like playing Xenoblade Chronicles at 2p or whatever the resolution of that fucking game is. Dang it.
That looked surprisingly good on the Switch. But
wait, Xenoblade? Absolutely.
Chronicles 3? Yeah. It's just, the res was rough.
Dude, the res in that game, and it shows good game design when when the look of the game is so good.
And they sold it.
They sold, the environment, and you're walking around just going, oh my God, this, but at the same time, I mean, it felt like you were seeing Minecraft locations.
Yep.
From far away, and you got closer and it got a little bit better, but it was weird because there were quite literally times where I was like, it feels a little bit like I'm playing Minecraft when I look at some locations, because you could see so many blocks, and then it would smooth out.
It makes me sad, those games that are exclusive, because imagine if there was a PC version of that game that you could have blown up 4K textures or something.
Dude, imagine. There's so many Zelda games. There's so many Mario games.
Yeah.
That I see, and I think the Mario games are great at hiding pixels for the most part and hiding resolution. They're masters. But then you realize, and you're like, dude, imagine playing, at 4K, this game that just has art design that is through the roof. If you like Mario, I'm not a big fan of Mario, but I'm a fan of their color work and just the way their games play. Vapor says, what's the worst looking game you've played recently? Ooh. Ooh, everybody in chat can feel free to answer that. What's the worst looking game you've played recently?
Damn.
Ooh. What's the worst looking game? Man, oh man. Let's say it has to be a newer game. Like, I can't say
right.
Columns for the Sega. What is a newer game that you played recently that just looked terrible? God damn, that is hard.
Yeah.
Okay, let me look at my game list. I'm going to have to cheat here.
I thought you were going to say Metaphor because you didn't like the way it looks that much, right?
Metaphor would be close because I didn't like the way everything came together, but it didn't have that, this is bad looking.
Yeah, it's a certain style.
It might have been bad to me, but it was all the style. And let me look at my list of games I've played. Let me see if I can find one that is on the list. So that looks bad. Damn. Anybody in chat got any? Save me. RDR1. Star Wars Outlaws was rough on the console. Was it? Yeah, I guess it was rough on the console. I don't know if it would be considered worse for me, but it was like the worst. But yeah, that one. Dude, I'm looking here. Do you got any, Johnny? Something that you've played recently?
No, I usually play good-looking games, man. It's just that is one of my selection biases.
Yeah, I mean, dude, and there's almost said that, but I don't think that's fair. No, wait. No. I mean, dude, it's certainly my selection bias too. I did play, okay, here's a game that I got to say I didn't think looked good at all. Awakening, the Awakenings game. The one with the actress from Witcher, the TV show, Unknown 9 Awakening. That game did not look good. So I think I didn't review it. I was sort of trying to find ones I hadn't reviewed, so that's pretty fair. That game did not look good. That would probably be, I will say, okay, and Until Dawn's remake.
Didn't look that good.
Yeah, Rice-A-Roni, as Kig would call it, Rise of Ronin. Rise of Ronin is definitely high up there. Wild One says Immortals. Immortals.
The EA game, Immortals of Avium.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Lollipop Chainsaw, somebody played. Damn. Fitness says Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's performance mode was too much Vaseline for me. That game, listen, I would never argue with that. That game definitely on performance mode is a bit, Flintlock. You know, okay. Yeah, stupid fly. Flintlock might be my, yeah.
A little rough.
Yeah, Flintlock.
Tell me about this game, Unknown Awakening. I didn't hear anything about it.
Dude, I only played a little bit of time. It's a game where you can jump to different bodies as this character who's got powers. It's the actress who played Witcher 3 or Witcher TV show, and it just
Jennifer.
It was dirty, it was muddy, it was really poor looking. But I would say Flintlock looked worse. That I think Flintlock, when I looked at it and I just compare it, looked worse, which is weird because I didn't hate any of these games, like hate them. I did think that Unknown was boring, but there's a difference.
And
between
it's a full price title too.
Yup, definitely a full price title. Let's see, Flintlock Riders Republic. Somebody says Ark, the new game. Damn. Vincent is saying Elden Ring stutters on PC and PS5. Yeah, Elden Ring never has come exactly where I want it to performance-wise. Weirdly enough. Still very playable. I love it.
Oh, Rise of the Ronin.
Rise of the Ronin is up there. Rise of the Ronin is rough. And man, I got some shit for disliking that game. But I was like, dude, the game is not good and doesn't look really even, like, let's say within the last 2 or 3 years graphically. Like, it just, yeah. Have a good one, Ultimate. Yeah, that one is just, it didn't leave a good taste in my mouth when it came down to it. What else do we got? Do we have any, let's go with something. Let's go with something crazy. Some kind of.
I got a little moral quandary
Here we
for
go.
you.
That's what I want.
Okay, so imagine that you are a fantasy character that lives in the, like, let's say Dragon Age universe. Okay. Let's say you're a warrior in there, right? So Carrick is like Ooga Booga, axe in hand, warrior. How do you view killing people in that type of universe? Would you consider yourself an evil character if you kill people, or is it possible for you to be like good but still kill people? Are those,
and this isn't gamified,
linked?
Right? This is like if you
no, more like thinking just about the
it?
fantasy aspect, almost like D&D, I guess. Like, is there a direct link between, because you always see this in movies and stuff, like if you kill people, you're evil, you know, they're always using that as the, but theoretically, you could be, you know, you could have, let's say, good intentions or good motives, but be okay with killing people. What is the line there? Obviously, in the real world, killing people is wrong, but we're thinking more like in a fantasy world.
Usually when it comes to fantasy, I equate it to like the Dark Ages or the Middle Ages. Or
medieval,
where maybe people did duels at dawn and the social stigma wasn't there for like a quick death or a death. The one thing that does bother me, though, is that if you imagine humans as like a timeline, like everybody's running concurrent with your life, you're taking your choices, we're here. Almost like you see those videos where somebody's talking about multiple dimensions. They're like, if you make this choice, you go here. So let's say you're running and I'm running. And we're side by side because we're both sharing the same day. You're just sitting right beside me. The idea of killing somebody is removing their timeline forever. Every experience and memory that they ever had is completely, utterly demolished and gone. Every experience, everything that you could ever get from that person knowledge-wise,
or
directly
anything
from that
that
person,
they would come to do in the future,
or that they would come to do, is
gone.
completely, utterly, absolutely demolished. If I think about it that way, no, I wouldn't very much. But if I think about it in the D&D way or what have you, violence, I mean, is a part of. They do have a tendency to deliver monsters to you. but you were talking in particular about humans, so I don't want to go there with monsters because that's sort of
I guess it could be different tribes or something that would also.
I mean, I don't even like that because I always like the idea of like, why don't we all just get together and make a better tribe, right? Like, and maybe it's because I don't really have a religious thing, so to me, I look at it very coldly, and I'm like, your assets, our assets, fair deal for you, fair deal for us, dude. We'll be ruling this island in a week.
But what if one tribe is like, dude, we love orcs. You know, we're banging orcs. We're mixing it in. They're in our society, yada yada. But
I don't think I would kill them unless they killed somebody. Like, then all bets are off, at least for the person who did it.
Yeah, if it's full on war.
Yeah, if somebody does something, then it's like, okay, that's why when we start talking about real life stuff and you have this tit for tat, one thing I told you, I think it was off camera, but I was telling you like a couple of weeks ago or whatever, is the one thing that I hate about this stuff is you're making enemies forever.
Yep.
And you only need one hotspot to recreate the hate that was there 20 years ago, whatever. So it's there forever. So I would say, yeah. I mean, in fantasy worlds and stuff like that, they're just always treated in such a way that it's a little bit like Game of Thrones, where death is like, it's like not so much of a thing, you know. So it's really difficult to understand what you would do. And then a lot of people would kill you. So then comes the idea of like, do you kill them first? You know, if you know that your business deal is going to cause people to try to come after you, do you let them attempt it and then they fail and then you go after them? Or do you preemptively say, I know I know Johnny attacks and tries to kill every businessman. We're in a merchant game. We're in Anno or whatever. Johnny keeps trying to kill every merchant, and I'm number one. Johnny's sweaty when it comes to merchants. Johnny likes to sweat it out. He likes to be the top.
Yeah.
Do I take him out early?
I did that in Divinity Original Sin too, because they asked for exorbitant prices for stuff.
Yeah.
And if I didn't agree
them?
with the price, I just killed the merchant and took their shit.
But you had a hard time playing Mass Effect as a bad guy? Dude, you're fucking warped. You killed a guy for a bad price, but you had a hard time. It was
unfair. They were trying to
dude,
extort me for money.
You just proved this is why the discussion is always so funny, because I'm sitting here thinking there's no chance you would have annihilated a merchant because his rice was too expensive. And then you're like, I'm going to kill him because the rice is too expensive, but I can't in Mass Effect trying to save the world.
I need these weapons to survive and save the
races
world.
Are weapons in Mass Effect. So to get them on your team, sometimes you have to, you have to replace a weapon. And if that's the leader, because you need to move forward with that group, you might have to take them out, right? Or punch the reporter. If anybody didn't punch the reporter in Mass Effect, they're a bad person.
Oh, like we can 100%.
Like that person is genuinely a bad person. But, dude, that's awesome. The discussion of video game and choices that you make, it's so funny because regardless of what we say, regardless of what we feel, at the end, you realize it's a game. But you have to understand that in real life, there are people, are real people who believe that it's also pretty much a game, and raise, who knows, nature, nurture, what have you, that there are some people out there, and that little flimsy rules stop some of them, not all of them, but some of them. It's an interesting discussion.
I do also think though that, Batman is equally guilty or culpable for leaving
Batman's
people
a dickhead.
Paralyzed.
Yeah, Batman paralyzes everybody. Like, dude, that shit's ridiculous.
You toss someone from a rooftop just because they have a heartbeat, that doesn't make you.
That's why I liked Arrow, because he was just like, these guys are bad, I'm killing them, I'm taking them out.
About it.
Yeah, when you try to pretend and grandstand, and he's telling everybody to do as he doesn't do, really.
And it weighs on him. It's not like it's easy, because, he says like, hey, I want to try a different way at some point, but.
Here's the thing, though. If a dog bites enough, you have to put it down. Or at the very least, you'll know it as a biter. If a person, like a Batman character, continually does stuff and then says, oh, I feel bad about it, at some point you have to be like, no, you shouldn't feel bad about it. You are bad. You are bad. And by the way, I'm okay with that. I'm actually okay with the idea that he's just like, I am a bad guy. I'm just less bad than the guys I take out, which is Arrow. That's why I think the gradient of heroes is always super interesting to me when I look at superhero stuff, because I'm not even a big superhero fan, but I love seeing the gradients and why somebody may like Batman but may dislike Arrow, even though Batman and Spider-Man both consistently lose people to death because they won't finally take the ultimate step and kill the fucking person. Yeah. Like, or have them have an accident. And how many comic books, how many movies of characters died because these two jackasses, you know, instead cripple the person, which makes them a hater. They cripple the person. They then hate Batman or Spider-Man, then double down and become even more evil. And you're like, dude, sometimes, man, you know,
True.
That's why you burn off a wart and destroy its core. You don't let it just come back. Yeah, you got to remove it. And that's what's cool, I think, about superhero stuff. That's why I can't wait to see Wonder Woman from WB, because they have the Nemesis system in it, and I want to see like how that works and what I think Wonder Woman's morals are pretty up there, right? I mean, generally, I think her morals are don't kill, what have you. But I want to see how they play that off. Like, does she just continually beat people up and they just keep coming back? Like, how are they going to handle that? That's one thing I really want to see. I'd love to see. Funny enough,
that villains make that mistake often too, where they leave the good guys alive so that they can come back and actually defeat them.
Dude, luckily, most movies don't do the bad guy telling everybody what they're going to do anymore, right? Usually. But when you ever see that and you're like, dude, come on, man. When the bad guy is like, well, I've got you in my place, that's ego. And that's what I do love about bad guys in games and movies, is when they do get ego. But this is why I like the Elusive Man in Mass Effect. Why I thought the Elusive Man worked for a good deal of time in Mass Effect was because you didn't know, was he just really intelligent with what occurred to him? And then he also had resources, obviously. He had resources everywhere, and he knew certain things. But you're like, is this guy just flexible? And because he didn't seem lodged in his choice. He wasn't like some race in a game that is very, you know, we hate orcs or whatever.
Yeah.
He had a thing he was trying to do, and you were taking all these choices, and he was figuring out his own shit, how to deal, even though he got a loose cannon, which is you. And I loved the idea of that, because I still to this day don't know how you're supposed to read him. Are you supposed, like, because some of the stuff you do, you're like, there's no way he could have known I was going to do this. Yeah. But his plan most of the times works out. So you're like, okay, so maybe he's not hyper intelligent. It's just all about resources, which I think is sort of where they went. It's just very good character in that game. I thought the Elusive Man was one of the best. I'd call him side companion, because you deal with him a lot.
They do a lot with very little, in a way.
Martin Sheen's very little. I'm going to tell him you said that. I'm going to be like, Martin, dude. I'm going to call it Martin.
You did a lot with your small penis.
I know you watch the podcast every single Friday, Martin. I just want you to know Johnny disses you on this last one, man. Just saying. Yeah, no, I agree. It's definitely one of the cooler bad guys. I don't know if we get a lot of cool side characters that are pseudo bad guys that don't become the full nemesis in games. I think that's pretty rare, right?
Yeah.
Like, is there, right? Yeah. Is there any bad guy that like anybody in chat, is there a character that's like a bad guy, but he's not the full nemesis?
I think you kind of have that with, is it Silas? His name in Horizon Zero Dawn.
Oh, true. Well, he
kind of is like sometimes the bad guy, right? But sometimes he's the good guy helping you. Other times there's another main bad guy, and he's kind of like frenemy.
Damn, frenemy kind of thing. Yeah, and luckily you said that. See, the thing is Silas does come across as a good guy at first. I was sort of trying to get it, because I never considered Martin or the Elusive Man as a good guy ever. Like, the first time you meet him, you're like, Yeah, he's sitting in front of a giant, whether he's in dark, he's like fucking, looking at the sun that's next to him. Yeah. Either he's got a, guy with this much money, he's for sure a bad guy, or for sure some kind of, move maker in the world. Ulterior motive kind of character.
100%.
Oregon Fresh says, speaking of Dragon Age, Solus. That's actually who, when he said Silas, I actually thought you were going to go with Solus, because I would say, even though technically he's sort of, like you could sort of Sephiroth? Would you agree with that?
Sephiroth is a bad guy. He got corrupted and became a full-on bad guy.
A1 Nangle says, you got me thinking of G-Man from Half-Life. Oh, interesting. Damn, dude, that actually might be a good answer. Well, yeah. No, I actually think that's that's a good answer. Mivik says, rip Lance Riddick playing Burning Shores and having watched Bosch lately. Yeah, we're rewatching Bosch right now, and we're also watching Fringe, and he's in both of those. He was just great.
Man, Fringe is so good.
Robert says, you guys going to check out Planet Coaster 2? Yeah, my review is up. I just haven't made it go live yet for Planet Coaster. I figured we'd do the podcast. Awesome. I wouldn't worry about the other stuff. What else do we got?
I think that's it for me. One thing about shows, I've been watching this Succession show. Have you seen that?
Parts of it, yeah. Did you like it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's oddly compelling, I would say. Everybody's an asshole, but it's one of those like oddly compelling things for some reason.
Hopefully your dog's fine, Kenshiro. Have a good one. Are you just working through the episodes? Season 1,
yeah,
season 2?
I'm already like season 2, halfway in. Been enjoying that. I like we always talk about competency porn.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some characters in that are like they have so many flaws, but they have the competency axis. That's really cool.
Yeah, I think that competency porn, I don't know why it's so important to me, but if there's even one character in a show,
yeah, that can be enough.
That can be enough. If they're really just, and in a game, again, why probably I like Elusive Man, when there's that competency and you're like, dude, I don't, is this guy that good? And they can have whatever eclectic ideas that they have or ways that they do things, but competency porn is a big deal to me. And it's become like something that when a show's got a little bit, I'm like, okay, I'm there for that character at least. And then hope that character doesn't die or, something crazy to that point. But I'm watching Fire Country, which is terrible.
Is it?
Dude, it's some of the worst. This is why it's so important to watch these shows. It is terrible writing, but it's from a guy who was a real firefighter, dealt with real firefighter stuff, and decided to make a show about it. It's on its 3rd season. It is as shallow as humanly possible. It is every WB TV show where you're like, if you just told the person what you're hiding in your locker, they wouldn't care. It'd be over, and the crux of the entire season wouldn't matter. But they don't, of course. And it's hilarious. It is well worth watching for pure stupid, like barely above board kind of shallow enjoyment. But yeah, it's bad. The writing, the stuff that happens in it, Johnny, I rarely sit there and say something like, why didn't they just do this? Every episode, every 3 or 4 minutes, my wife will start laughing out loud. She'll just start cracking up. And I'll be like, what? And she's like, why didn't he just grab the blah, 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 or whatever? And I'm like, oh, Christ, you're noticing things. Because I think I notice stuff. She's noticing entirely different things. So we'll rewind it. And the dumbest moves, it's the opposite of competence porn. It's he's a good firefighter, admittedly. But
yeah,
it's the opposite. It's the very absolute opposite of competence porn. But it is, dude, it's been highly enjoyable. And I think it's so useful to watch a shit show because you have a new baseline. And so when somebody says this show is shit, you're like,
well,
yeah, wait a minute.
With games, well, it's a 7 game, but like there's a lot of worse games.
Exactly. And you can sort of level it. And I think people should, if you get a chance, go and
are you still enjoying the Penguin?
I've got, but no. Well, I mean, in my way, I stopped. I had to review Coaster Planet too. But yeah, watching Arrow, we're watching Fire Country a bunch. We finished up Fringe season 5. Every night we do about 4, and then I do about 2 more because everybody goes to bed before me, and then I wake up and do 1 more while I'm working out or after I'm working out, and then maybe 2 more. So I'm watching like 6 shows where I bounce around. I like Penguin. I think it's good. I like him. I think Colin's a good actor.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it. I actually think Colin, Matthew McConaughey is in that new space game that's coming out. I can't remember the name. I'd love to see Colin in one because I actually think he's sort of young at heart where he does these weird things, where him being in something like that could add something fresh to it. I would love to see him in it. I'm enjoying him as I get older more than I ever thought I would. I used to think he was such a, I don't know. I used to just be like, he was a younger guy. He did some really
more
morally gray stuff when he was younger.
He did a lot of similar.
Yeah. He did some weird stuff when he was younger, but overall I've started to really become.
Yeah, he's pretty awesome. There's some other really good members of the cast too, like the girl who does the daughter of the family. Yeah, she was.
Yep. She's been in a couple really other things too. Now that I think about it, she's.
Yeah.
People are saying, let's see, we need a dev that isn't afraid to step out and make a good GOT game. That was GOT.
Game of Thrones?
Oh.
Yeah, because they were saying Game of Thrones is a good show. Larian could tackle a game.
Game of Thrones as a game, I played 2 of them. Both were not good.
Which ones? The Telltale?
Telltale and the RPG one.
Oof, the old RPG. Yeah.
I don't see Game of Thrones as, I don't know.
Much of it is about the politicking, isn't it?
It is, and it's just not a super interesting world when it's not including those big characters. Because we talked about this before, and I can't remember what game or what show it was, but we said, I think I told you Dragonlance is this way, where it was written in a way to where any side characters were very difficult because they weren't the world changers. And I get with Game of Thrones, you're not a world, you can have non-world changer games, but at that point, you'd be like, then you could be killed at any. I don't know. It depends. I don't know enough about Game of Thrones. Maybe there's some time frame where that would make more sense. That little no-see-em is around here. Is there a Total War Game of Thrones mod? Oh, I don't know.
It might be. I mean, that might be one decent way to do it, where you just have the universe of it. You do something set in the world where it's not as much like focused on one person per se.
I feel like Game of Thrones IP has dropped dramatically in its worth. Not just because of the show having some issues, but just because I don't know why.
Well, the hype around it has dropped a lot.
Maybe that's all.
With House of Dragons, which has done well, actually.
Has it? Okay,
like
well, there you go.
Yeah,
you're right. It has, actually.
But overall, it definitely declined from the hype it was at.
You're right. It maybe there's just so many shows that I'm thinking it's dropped. I think you're absolutely right. I think from what I know, Solar's talked about it. You've talked about it. Yeah.
You could think that it just dropped off the face of the earth, but there's still excitement about it. And
yeah, that's true. I hadn't really put 2 and 2 together. That'll be it for us. If you guys get a chance, I would really appreciate you joining the Patreon. You can jump into our Discord if you do so, or you can become a member here and jump in. We hopefully will make it worth your while, and it should be pretty easy to join up your Discord account and the Patreon account. There's an FAQ there if you decide to do so. The only thing I can do is promise you that at some point you're going to disagree about a game with me. So if you don't want to disagree, then probably not the best place to be. We've got Coaster Tycoon coming from me, a review. Got another video that I have that's a little different, I think, than some of the other stuff I do that'll come out. I got to look at the schedule, but I'm working on it right now. As always, about middle of the month, you'll see a next month's top 10 or 10 games I'm interested in. Feel free at any time, if you're in the Discord in particular, to shoot me DMs or mention it in general chat if there's a game you're interested in the next month, because it's easy to miss them. And then we're looking at a bunch of games in November, December, whether it be Slitterhead, which I'm really interested in, the horror game. Can't wait to see that. Even if I don't get a code, that's like, it's only like 7 days away. So that'll be awesome. A lot of different games coming out that are exciting. And then Johnny is going to be doing another one of his League of Legends games. When is that one coming?
Yeah. So my channel is Johnny Plays on YouTube, and I do daily League of Legends content. Every day there's a new game, new matchup where I talk about it and take it through it. People say it's chill and good to sleep too. So as creepy as it may sound, feel free to tune in if you need to get some sleep and just,
leave it running.
Zone out, leave it running, zone out.
I've thought about taking walking the walk for Valhalla, which is 6 hours total, because I split up into 3, and just put it on either this channel or the other channel and just be like, hey, if it takes off, because those long videos, I mean, it's sort of the thing right now is, multiple channels have called them like sleeping videos and those I talk, I try to make sure to slow it down. I'm talking about history and stuff. So yeah, I've thought about that as well. Man, I got to shave some of this massive mustache off. It is itching my nose like crazy. I realized it today when I was getting ready to trim my mustache. I was like, Jesus, that thing that's like, it's not even a mustache. It's the beard. It's just grown around my face. And my back. I'm just joking. That would be horrendous. That would
Can
be
you
like
imagine
a
if it connected at some point? Like,
oh my God. If I turn and you see like the hair go down my back and it's just that thick, like a little shag rug. That's so gross. Back hair bothers me. I don't know why, man. Like it shouldn't. I mean, people can be what they want, but like the idea, whenever I'm scratching my back, I'm like, there's a hair there. I don't like that. Anyway, that'll be it for us. Back hair is how we end it. I hope everybody has an awesome weekend. If you get a chance, tweet out that we're doing it. Peace out, everybody.